Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting back to order. May I have the roll call, please?
The record will reflect that all members of council are present.
Mr. City Attorney, is there a closed session report?
Mayor Curry, there's no closed session report this evening.
I invite the audience to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Councilman Selich, and then please remain standing for the invocation.
Please join me in the pledge to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our Father and our God, we, your obedient servants, gather tonight. We thank you and give you thanks for this great place of the public to which we can hold these meetings. We thank you for bringing us into 2013 as a prosperous and safe city. We ask your continued blessings upon our people, upon our community, for humility and wisdom in the decisions which we must make. In your name we pray. Amen. The first order of business today is a happy presentation to Mackenzie Gaddis. Is Mackenzie present? Please come forward, and let me also invite Rob Williams from our lifeguards to come forward. Mackenzie is the 2012 Junior Lifeguard of the Year. And so, Mackenzie, if you will stand there with Rob. Let me just read this proclamation. Whereas Mackenzie Gaddis was selected as the 2012 Junior Lifeguard of the Year for exemplifying the values of the Junior Lifeguard program, and whereas Mackenzie adhered to the 3 R's, respectful, responsible, and representative. Always be respectful of yourself and others. Be responsible in all you do, because as a junior lifeguard you are a representative of the city of Newport Beach Lifeguards. And whereas Mackenzie's most prominent qualities are her sense of humor, eagerness to learn, and work ethic, she was always on time, had 100% attendance, and always asked her instructors if there was anything she could do to help them. And whereas Mackenzie excelled in numerous physical events, she was always the first in the water and was among the top finishers in the A division. And whereas Mackenzie was proficient in the rigorous first aid and rescue components, and she completed all necessary skills to attain the highest level of a captain during the summer of 2012, she consistently volunteered to demonstrate lifeguard and first aid skills. And whereas during the regional competition hosted by Newport Beach, Mackenzie represented the city, helped others, helped the less experienced junior lifeguards to arrive at their events on time, as well as competing at a high level in her own events. She mentored the young junior lifeguards and was an ambassador for the city of Newport Beach. Now, therefore, I, Keith Curry, Mayor of Newport Beach, on behalf of the entire Newport Beach City Council, do hereby commend Mackenzie Gaddis for being the 2012 Junior Lifeguard of the Year.
We also have one more item to present to Mackenzie. This is presented from the California Surf Lifesaving Association, our organization of California lifeguards, a $200 scholarship in her name.
I would like to thank everyone involved in Junior Guards, Captain Halfide, Mr. Skur, and Mr. Philpott, and everyone else in the city. This is amazing for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Mackenzie. And now I would like to invite Mr. Roger Prasser, the historian of the 2012-2013 Orange County Grand Jury, to come forward for presentation.
Thank you, honorable members of the City Council and Mayor Curry, ladies and gentlemen. The 2012-2013 Grand Jury is now recruiting for the 2013-2014 Grand Jury. As I said, we were recruiting for the 2013-2014 grand jury. Now, most people don't really have too much of an idea what the grand jury is. A lot of the reactions that I got when I told people I was going to be on the grand jury for a year, they said, "Oh my gosh, you're going to be on a trial that lasts for a year?" And that's not true. There is a criminal function for the grand jury, but we do not decide guilt or innocence. We decide reasonable cause or likely. Is it likely that the crime charged occurred, and is it likely that the people charged with the crime committed the crime? So one of the things that sort of surprised us was that from the commission of a homicide, of a murder, it takes 5 years from the commission until the trial begins. If a murder indictment is brought to the grand jury, it takes less than 4 years. So it cuts down, and it helps to bring justice for the victims and the families, and it helps assure that the accused also get a fair trial and get justice. The other side of the what the grand jury does is, and let me read this, the chief function of present-day grand juries is that as a watchdog of local and county government. This watchdog function can only operate if lines of communication to the public, which the grand jury represents, are kept open and clear. Public opinion brought to bear on decision makers can affect the changes which grand juries can only recommend. While it is part of the judicial system, and when you're sworn in to the grand jury, you're sworn in as an officer of the Superior Court. The presiding judge of the criminal department of the Superior Court, the district attorney, the county council, and the state attorney general can act as advisors to the grand jury, but they cannot control or direct the actions of the jury except for legality and a concern for the liability and responsibility. Because of the confidential nature of grand jury's work, much of it must be conducted in closed session. Members of a grand jury are sworn to secrecy, and the oath of secrecy lasts for life. If it doesn't become public knowledge, you cannot talk ever about the things that the grand jury has done. The oath of office for the grand jury is 1 year, from July 1st to June 30th. Members of the grand jury are sworn to secrecy, thus assuring all who appeared that their complaints will be handled in an entirely confidential manner. No one may be present during the sessions of the grand jury except those specified by law, Penal Code 939. And the minutes of its meetings may not be inspected by anyone, nor can its records be subpoenaed. And I would urge you to think about applying for the grand jury. It is very hard work, and I have to say, there are some really rather horrific things that you will see in murder indictments, and some people have quit because they kind of didn't know that they would, but you will. The other thing is, though, it's a very unique human experience. You get to be friends with the district attorneys. You practically know them personally. We were involved with the district attorney's Adopt a Family program this Christmas. We took bananas up to the emergency operations centers for the sheriff's deputies that man the emergency operations centers, because we found out that the sheriff's deputies up there don't like donuts. They work out to keep in shape, and bananas are the new donuts of the sheriff's department. You can do other things, too. You can go on fly-alongs with the sheriff's helicopters. You can go on ride-alongs. You can request ride-alongs with the Newport Beach Police Department. We were also told, in many ways, the grand jury is the most powerful political entity in the county. You can investigate the Board of Supervisors. You can investigate any local government entity except the Superior Court, because you're an officer of the Superior Court and you can't investigate yourself. So, as I said, it's a unique human experience. It's a unique opportunity to serve and represent the people of Orange County. One other difference that I didn't know that I'll just mention that's a little detail is trial juries are called petite or petit juries because they have 12 members on it. The grand jury is grand because it has 19 members on it. So that's it, unless there's any questions.
Mayor Curry?
Yes.
If I could.
Councilmember Gardner.
Yes.
You have a number of leftover flyers which you might want to put out in front or something.
Yeah.
Keep them.
Okay, thank you very much.
There are flyers at the City Hall in the entranceway right down there, and there are some applications here, and there's information that I'll leave if anybody wants it.
Great. Thank you for coming down, and a great service by the grand jury. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Notice to the public.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the city council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has a discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones off or set them in the silent mode. Now is the time for council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
Thank you. Councilmember Gardner.
I have nothing.
Councilmember Petros.
I have nothing.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill.
No report.
Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, a couple things. The first is Homeowners Association approached me with a problem that they've been having for some time. And come to find out they're not the only HOA with this issue. And that is when they hold their events, they'll put up a tent. And every time that they put up the tent, it requires a fire fee, a fee from the fire department. The city manager isn't authorized to waive that fee. However, a majority of the city council is. And so they've asked if we can have that agendized. And whether or not the inspection needs to happen every time, whether or not there can be a flat annual fee, whether there can be a fee waiver. So there's really sort of a variety of possible solutions. But they'd like to come and talk to us about this and have some ideas on how that might be able to be changed. And then secondly, there's a couple of issues that I've been hearing a lot from my constituents, and consistent with our council policy that a member can agendize certain topics. The two that I've been hearing a lot about is the regional dredging permit, and knowing that the Harbor Commission is going to be taking public testimony, as much testimony as you want to give them. At that point, the Harbor Resources staff will have some ideas in our approach and our consultant. So I'd like for the council to also know on that topic where we're going with that permit, and with our contractor what kind of deliverables and milestones that we're looking at there. And then the second issue is something that's been working on for about 5 years, and that's the eelgrass. And it's my understanding that we have some buy-in in some agencies, and we have a meeting where we may have more. But people have really been asking a lot of questions about, when we're going to get some resolution on that particular issue, which is also tied in with their ability to dredge. So if we could get those discussions itemized, that'd be great, and understanding they may not be on the same agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hinton.
Yes, is this on? Yeah. Yes, a few things, Mr. Mayor. First thing I'd like to do is comment for just a moment on the boat parade. I was absolutely thrilled this year that the boat parade was such a tremendous success. From nearly every perspective that I can see, one of the biggest successes that we've had in years, maybe ever. And despite the controversy, maybe because of the controversy, it seemed to have had a larger amount of participation both on the water and in the Ring of Lights than ever before, and I believe through customers and visitors that have come to the city to enjoy it, as well as the media attention, which was the strongest, best ever. And I attended the Balboa Village bid meeting, the Business Improvement District meeting, this morning, and got even a few more insights on that. I know the Balboa parking lot was full for the first time on the Wednesday beginning of the parade. and maybe other nights too. I talked to Mike Thompson, who runs a boat service, a charter boat service, and he said not only was he full every single night of the parade, he was full many nights prior to the parade for people coming down wanting to just cruise the harbor and see the Ring of Lights. And so I want to extend my thanks to the Visit Newport Beach people who work so hard to make sure that everyone understood that the boat parade was alive and well and going to happen, and also to the residents that continued to support the boat parade in such an outstanding fashion. We've had a lot of controversy in the harbor over the last year or so with fees and dock fees and that sort of thing. I'm trusting and very hopeful that that controversy is now essentially behind us, and that we can all pull together and really work for the betterment and improvement of the harbor and an even bigger and better boat parade as we go forward. I'd also like to mention on another subject that the city sponsors e-waste collection events every so often. We've got another one coming up. It's at Mariner School between 8 and 1 p.m. And you know what? I didn't write down the date. Does anybody have that date? Is it it's the 18th. Yeah, and it's a Saturday. And it's just a great opportunity to drop off that e-waste that tends to collect. I know it collects around my house. No matter what I do, I seem to end up with electronic items that I'm no longer using, and it goes to a good purpose. Coming up tomorrow, actually, we have the Balboa Village Advisory Committee meeting. This is the monthly meeting. It's scheduled for 4 p.m. at the Nautical Museum. And at that meeting, we'll be considering finalizing our 2013 work program. We'll be talking about the commercial parking management program that we intend to pursue this year. And we'll be appointing a subcommittee of the committee that will look after the commercial facade program that we hope to implement. So that'll be a good meeting. And, of course, the public is invited. The more input, the better. And then next week, on Wednesday, January the 16th at 4 p.m. at the Oasis Center, the Tidelands Management Committee will meet. And we've got a few substantive agenda items there as well. We're going to be talking about finalizing a recommendation to council as a whole regarding how we might segregate and protect the increased fees that are being generated throughout the harbor for, in effect, sequestering for use on harbor improvements, so that those fee monies go to the benefit of those that pay the money as well as the other users of the harbor. Secondly, we're going to get what I think will be a very interesting presentation on a different way for a tide control structure to protect the harbor, a way other than raising seawalls all around the harbor. So I'm looking forward to that, thanks to Councilman Selich, who arranged for that. And then we'll be talking about perhaps other ways that the cost of maintaining and improving our harbor can be shared amongst other more general public users of the harbor, because we do have costs that go way beyond our revenue sources, and right now those revenue sources are confined to people that live and have businesses in and around the harbor. Doesn't seem right that those folks should be such heavy contributors, and yet there are so many others that benefit and use the harbor that are not. So we're going to at least have a look at that and see what kind of where that takes us by way of direction. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hinn. And Councilman Mayor Pro Tem Hill has reminded us that Saturday is the 19th for the e-waste collection. Mr.
I have no
Selich.
items tonight.
A couple of things. First of all, I would like to remind you that on Saturday, this upcoming Saturday, at 8:30 at the Oasis Center, we'll be having our annual City Council Gold Sitting Session. This is where the council, with staff, has the opportunity to talk about the important issues for next year and set some priorities for where the council is going to move forward. These meetings are open to the public, and we encourage you to join us for this. This will be, again, this upcoming Saturday at 8:30 in the morning. And then just a quick note is right after our last meeting, I was privileged, along with Councilmember Daigle, to participate in the dedication of the new Our Lady Queen of Angels Church. It is a magnificent facility, one that will just bless our community for years and decades into the future. I encourage all of you to go by and check it out, and we celebrate with our friends from Our Lady on the dedication of their new facility. With that, we'll move now to the consent calendar.
All matters listed.
Mayor Curry, before you go further, I didn't know that I caught where you said the location of the goal setting.
It's at the Oasis Senior Center.
Great,
yeah.
Thanks.
Consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 13, are considered to be routine and will be all enacted by one motion in the form listed below. Council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the City Council votes on the motion unless members of the City Council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss the consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor and state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Thank you. Do any members of the council have items they would like to pull? Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, I'd like to pull items 5 and 12, and then I wanted to express my appreciation on item 7. That's completion of the paving on Bristol. And there's been, if we count the Upper Newport Ecological Reserve, there's been about $80 million in capital improvements up in my district, so I'm very, very grateful for that. I think I'm down to about a bike lane, so maybe Councilman Petros can help with that one.
Thank you. Mr. Hinn?
Yes, I have nothing to pull, but I did want to register an abstention on consent item number 8 having to do with the alley replacement contract in Assessment District 100. My home is located in that district, so I will not be casting a vote on that item.
Okay, Mr. Selich?
No items to pull.
Councilmember Gardner?
Nothing?
Mr. Petros?
No items to pull.
Mayor Pro Tem Hill?
No items to pull.
And I have no items to pull. City member of the public wish to have any items to pull beyond 12 and 5?
Hi, my name is Laura Curran. I'd like to pull item 6 on the open meeting process.
Okay. That's item 5. Yeah, item 6 is on Peninsula Point, alley replacement. Okay. All right, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I would move the consent calendar with the exception of items 5 and 12, and noting the recusal of Councilman Hinn on item number 8.
All right, is there any discussion? Any member of the public wish to discuss an item that's on the consent calendar? Seeing none, please vote. This will be the first. Sorry?
Did a council member second?
Second on Mr. Hill's motion.
Mr. Hill's
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
Petros. This will be, by the way, the first official use of the electronic voting system. So you're here for history making at its finest.
We hope.
If it works.
We hope.
Please vote. Dun, 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 dun.
You're able to.
And we celebrate with a unanimous vote.
And the
How
motion
about
carries
that?
unanimously.
Okay. Item 5, Councilmember Daigle.
Yes, I was noticing the report was prepared by the city clerk. Is this like a proposal that you had come up with, or is it?
It was based on my recommendation that we brought forth.
Okay. And then I'd obviously like to hear from the public, but the one that I have take issue with is that the public can't pull a consent item, and I think that would be important to keep that practice.
Mayor?
Councilmember Gardner.
I would agree with that, but I would also like to clarify something on page now where is it? We talk about at the study session that speaking on closed session and agenda items. We don't speak about the general agenda and non-agenda items. And I think it's important that at the end of a study session that if you have just an item you want to speak on, you can, because we have seniors perhaps who may not like to drive at night, but who would come to a study session to have the opportunity for public comment. So I would hope that we wouldn't have that so narrow. We've always taken it that way, but the way it reads, it doesn't read that way.
Well, that would not be the intent, so I'd be fine with that.
Okay. But as I say, I also agree. I think that a member, we often have things on the consent calendar, they're actually pretty weighty. And I think that a public member should be able to pull that as well. I have no problem with the rest of it, though.
Okay, thank you. I will just say briefly, since I suggested this and asked that it be brought forward, that if you look at the sort of the pace of our meetings, that 3 minutes is significantly more than what most people actually take when they speak, and oftentimes people find themselves trying to speak more or going back and being repetitive over the things that they've had to say simply because they have the more time and they feel obligated to try and fill up the full 5 minutes. The city clerk recently did a survey and found that most of the cities here in Orange County, 3 minutes is the specified time that people have. And perhaps the biggest public hearing that we had in all of last year, which was the Banning Ranch hearing, Mayor Gardner imposed a 3-minute limit, and we found that nearly all the speakers came in well under 3 minutes. In fact, they started reading a serialized letter with the extra time that all of them had, which, just for the record, by the way, was perhaps the most ineffectual public advocacy strategy ever employed. But nonetheless, what it shows is that people who are focused in their thoughts can certainly express them within the 3-minute period. As for the time for pulling items off of the consent calendar and who can do that, we also surveyed other jurisdictions in Orange County and found that most of them actually have that same rule, that people can speak on consent calendar items but not necessarily pull them off for a separate vote. So that's why that is in the recommendation the way that it is.
Just a note that it was on page A6 on the order of business. It says public comments, study session, and closed session. So if we could expand that language when we do it.
Right, to allow for comments on a broader topic during study session. And the reason, of course, for moving it to be after the public hearings is because we do have a lot of people who come to speak. Predominantly, it's on a public hearing. It's not uncommon under our current structure for people to have to wait 30 or 40 minutes for miscellaneous public comments before an audience full of people here for a specific topic get the opportunity to speak, which is why we're changing the order back to where it was actually in 2006 through 8 when I was first on the council.
I think that you did a survey, or somebody did a survey, that most of the cities do 3 minutes. I know. I think the Coastal Commission is 3 minutes. I appeared in front of a federal body to testify about the toll road and had 3 minutes. So 3 minutes isn't considered unusual.
No, it's not at all, and in fact, it's what the majority of Orange County cities have. So I will offer a motion unless someone else would like to offer a motion.
Mayor,
Mr. Hill.
I would move the item number 5 as drafted.
All right, I would second the item. Is there further discussion?
Public comments.
Public comment on this item, please. Ms. Curran or Mr. Mosher, please come forward.
Mayor Curry and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosher. I don't actually recall a 30-minute segment of public comment being very common in Newport Beach on non-agenda items. And it's probably not wise to start by insulting you, but I would like to point out that under the revised city charter that you encouraged voters to adopt in November, you are now officially paid something like $33,000, including benefits, per year to attend 22 meetings. That works out to something like $1,500 per meeting. And I think for that amount of money, it's not unreasonable to expect you to be willing to sit up there for a few minutes to listen to us, and also for you to discuss and vote separately on items we ask you to. I assume you know that our right to instruct you is enshrined in the California Constitution. It's in Article 1, Section 3. And since 2004, it has further been required that when any new rule is adopted restricting our access to your meetings or your writings, it must be adopted with findings demonstrating a public interest, not your interest, that is being protected and the need to protect it. It is fine to point out other cities with more restrictive rules, but those rules are probably got there because the citizens in those cities were less vigilant. And however they got there is totally irrelevant because we have our own rules and our own traditions here in Newport Beach. Councilman Henn, when he was the mayor, frequently pointed out how proud he was that Newport Beach was different in many respects, and I can assure you that our 5-minute rule is one of those differences that citizens in cities that do not have it are envious of us for having. By restricting our existing rules, you are, in my opinion, limiting our access to you and to your meetings, and our Constitution does not allow you to do that without adopting the necessary findings, and I don't think you can do that. I suggest you look at the Brown Act. It does indeed permit you to adopt reasonable restrictions and time limits, but only for the purpose, and they are only reasonable if they are for the purpose of the goal of the Brown Act, which is to ensure that everyone who wishes to speak has an opportunity to speak in a meeting of reasonable length. Pointing to other cities does not demonstrate that there is a problem in Newport Beach that needs to be fixed. In 2011, you considered this same matter of reducing the time limit from 5 to 3, and by the way, I don't know why 4 is not a number in our lexicon. In 2011, you rejected this proposal, and I urge you to do the proper and legal thing and reject it again. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there other public comments? Please come forward.
Good evening. My name is Laura Curran. I live in Newport Beach. So I'd like to comment on item 5, the public meeting process. And first of all, the purpose of the changes in the consent calendar process and the public comments was unclear based on the staff report. And these changes could potentially reduce public input and transparency. So, for example, the consent calendar is where items that the staff considers non-controversial are grouped together and passed as a group. And that's generally a positive process because it helps expedite the meeting. But at the same time, there are consent calendar items such as contracts and appointments, which may, where input from the public may be useful because the public may have information not available to the staff members or to council. So we want to facilitate as much input as possible within the normal bounds. So limiting comments, however, I agree that limiting comments on each consent calendar item to be consistent and 3 minutes is a reasonable amount. And in fact, tonight I polled my nieces and nephews at dinner, and they agreed that in 3 minutes, you could say quite a lot. So that's the youth for you. However, it's unclear from the staff report, the public comment that's proposed at the beginning of the consent calendar process, is that 3 minutes in total, or is that 3 minutes per item, as would be for any other item? Because tonight, for example, if a person desired, though I've never seen it happen, to comment on all 13 items, they would only have 23 seconds, unless an item was pulled later by council. And so it really should be, in the public comment period, 3 minutes per item. Council members then will, of course, be able to pull items for discussion. And it's unclear, when will this occur in the meeting? Will it be before or after public comment, or both? And usually council members have broad discretion, so I would imagine they could do it at any time. However, given that after public comment, if an item is pulled by council, someone could then also comment when that item is discussed, it could actually take more time. because you have a public comment period and you have an item pulled by council. So a speaker could, in theory, speak for 6 minutes on a particular item, and the amount of time could take longer. So I would say that the process that we've had has worked pretty well, because most folks that come and talk about a consent calendar item are trained to be respectful of a time period. So separately, about comments on non-agenda items, there is a proposal to move this after public hearings. And, you know, I would say that when Mr. Henn made the change in 2011, I actually found that it worked quite well, because public hearings are often the longest part of the agenda, and I've been at meetings waiting to make comments on non-agenda items till 11 at night. Whereas, when you're able to make a comment on a non-agenda item earlier in the meeting, more members of the public come and are potentially interested in participating, because it's earlier on. And as you know, if the mayor wishes to move an item to earlier in the agenda, a hearing, he can do so. So, you know, I would say this process that was started 2 years ago, where non-agenda items come up earlier, it seems to work quite well, and we should leave it because it maximizes public input. And finally, item A6, number 2, where council members can put the agenda on, submit items for the agenda up until 5 p.m. on the Tuesday before council. In reading the staff report, it wasn't clear to me, is this the same Tuesday as the day of the council meeting, or is this the Tuesday the week before the council meeting? And if it is the Tuesday of the council meeting, when the agenda is published on Friday, if something is placed in the calendar up until Tuesday, how will members of the public be notified that new items have been added to the agenda? So anytime you try to implement a new process, there's always kinks to work out, so those comments are made in the spirit of improving the proposal. And I know you're all aware that public comment is an essential part of the public process, and sometimes public meetings and have a lot of public comment. In Newport, in fact, we have extensive public comment, and it makes the meetings go long. But that also means that in the end, we have a broader perspective and broader participation because we have an engaged citizenry. And therefore, any changes that are made should encourage participation and make it easier for members of the public who come frequently to council and for members who are coming for the first time to participate with a reasonable expectation of being heard and understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Curran. Are there any other comments? Please come forward.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor Curry. My name is George Schroeder, and I'm a 25-year resident of Newport Beach. I come to council meeting about 20 minutes early, and I come early so I can open up I just bought a new Ultrabook laptop, so I can open up and download the packet and read all of the things that we're going to be discussing. And I came early tonight so I could read this item. And, you know, there's no Wi-Fi in here. And I was told by a staff member that we're not going to have Wi-Fi in here until June. So, you know, if that's the case, I would recommend that we meet at the current council location where we can have Wi-Fi. And also there's no 110. You know, I spent a lot on this new Ultrabook. It's supposed to last 6 hours, but I know after a year it's going to be down to about 3 hours or less. And at the old location, there was 110 where you could plug in. There's no 110 anywhere here. So anyways, I wanted to speak on this item. I haven't been able to read all of it. I would say on the public comments, what Councilman Mayor Henn did to put it at the end of the consent calendar is a very good thing. It's an opportunity for members of the community to make an announcement about useful events that the public may want to hear about. That's what I use it for. Okay, or perhaps to come up and thank the staff or the council for doing a good job. So if you wanted to limit the time on any of these public speaking to 3 minutes, I would support that. If you want to limit the amount of items that can be pulled by one person on the consent item to 3, I would support that. I know sometimes when something is on the public hearing, next meeting it's on the consent calendar. Oftentimes, a member of the public who is impacted by that public hearing, if they can't make it that first time, they can always come back at the next council meeting. Even though it's on the consent calendar, most times it may not have any impact, but at least the member of the public feels he's had a chance to be heard. And when you pull that opportunity away, that's not a healthy thing. Also, what Council Member Gardner said, you know, seniors don't want to drive at night. Okay, a lot of members of the community are working 8 to 5. They can't be at an afternoon meeting. They can come at night. So any limitations on opportunity to speak on these items, I think is going in the wrong direction. The city gets extremely high marks on satisfaction because of the process we have. I realize it is an irritant. I sit here. I've read all the materials. Oftentimes people are speaking on items I don't think are important, but it's just part of the process. And I'm sure some people might feel about what I'm saying right now, but I hope you will take these things under consideration because I think we have a good city. I think we're going the right direction, and I expect that we'll be doing that after this discussion, I hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Are there any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. Let me just clarify. I do believe, I think Ms. Curran raised a very good point. The 5 p.m. deadline, that's not the day of the council meeting. That would be in violation, I think, of the Brown Act, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
So this is the Tuesday of the week
prior,
before.
The week before.
So I think that addresses, I think she properly raised that issue.
Mayor Carey, I'd like to make a substitute motion,
Councilmember Gardner.
which is to, I move all of these items with the following changes: the clarification of the public comments about the study session at the end of study session, to let the public, to leave it as it is as far as the public removing items from the consent calendar, and thus removing the public comments on consent calendar. That would be unnecessary then, so that would be my motion.
Is there a second?
I'm not sure I understood the last thing you said.
Yeah.
The public could still pull things from the consent. Well, right now we have as a substitute for that, for the public being able to pull items, the public has a public comment session on the consent calendar.
I see.
So we wouldn't need both of those.
Okay, so you want the public to have the right to pull, and then you would not need the public comment on
They could then
consent
just
calendar.
comment on the items that came up.
Hearing no second.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion and second. The substitute motion by Councilmember Gardner. Does everybody understand what it is and does? Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion by Councilmember Gardner?
The motion fails with council members Hill, Curry, Selich, and Hen voting no.
All right, so the motion on the floor then is by Mr. Hill. And Mr. Hill, I presume that you'd be okay if we include Councilmember Gardner's recommendation regarding the study sessions to allow people to comment generally there as they would at a council meeting.
Yes, and also the clarification that it's the Tuesday prior to the city council meeting.
Okay, that's the motion on the floor.
I would like to ask Councilmember Hill if he'd consider one further change, and that is to move the public comments on non-agenda items back to where it was ahead of the public hearings. I do think that there were some reasonable points raised here tonight about people that make public service announcements and other reasons why that's reasonable. And we are talking about getting the benefit of going from 5 minutes to 3 minutes on other public comment opportunities here. So I think we do have an opportunity to run a more efficient meeting and still provide for that public comment on non-agenda items before the public hearings. So I would ask if you'd be willing to amend your motion to do that.
I would be willing to do that if the second would be willing to accept that as well.
I think that's me, and I am.
Oh, okay.
All right. Is everybody yes, Councilmember Davis.
On the issue of council members being able to submit an item on a Tuesday before and the week before, it's my understanding from reading our policy, though, that the extent of our ability to do that is limited to items for discussion and not items for action. It pretty clearly says that in our own policy. So I guess I'm confused why we have an item for action when the extent of our powers is an item for discussion.
You mean on tonight's agenda, why this is
Yeah.
on for an action item? It's actually being presented by staff at the suggestion of Council Member Curry. He didn't officially request that to be put on, so this is coming from staff.
Okay, so the staff wants to reduce the amount of public comments.
No, I don't think that's the case. It's up to the City Council to decide how your meetings are processed. It was a suggestion that this might be an item you'd like to consider.
All right, the motion on the floor.
I did have one other question.
Yeah.
Excuse me. It's been alleged here that what we're intending to do is not in accordance with the law or the Brown Act or whatever. Would the city attorney comment on that, please?
Mr. Mosher made a couple of comments. First, the changes to the charter, the amendment thereto, did not increase any council member's compensation. I think that that's an important point that he neglected to make. In regards to the California Constitution, it wouldn't be applicable in this in this situation, and he's selectively quoting portions of it. It primarily applies to statutes or court rules that limit access to government. I don't think it's applicable in this situation.
Mr. Curtis.
I would just like to point out that this question about when the agenda items are to be put on the Tuesday preceding the meeting has been part of the council policy. There is no changes. There's nothing new here. As for my own opinions, I will share with you that for the past 30 years I've been up and down the state in front of city councils, planning commissions, other agencies, and it is not unusual to have a 3-minute rule. That is what is the norm and the standard. Because we do something that is different than that does not, and would come back to 3 minutes, does not restrict anybody's access to us. In fact, I think that now in this digital age, the social media and the social emails that I receive, I get enough information already, and I'm the new kid on the block. I would also just point out that that bastion of progressive democracy, the city of Santa Monica, only permits a minute or 2 minutes for public comment. So I think that it's been my experience that that 3-minute standard is adequate. I do believe, though, that there are circumstances when the public is affected by a consent calendar issue, and I would like to see them have the ability to pull those items.
Okay, so that's what we voted on before.
I appreciate that.
Okay, so any further discussion? Seeing none, we're voting on Mr. Hill's motion. Please vote.
With council members Gardner, Petros, and Daigle voting no, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. And we'll now go to item number 12, and I believe there are some clarifications from the city clerk on this item that we should probably lay out before we move into it.
There's a couple of changes that will need to be at the request of, if council will make the motion, to amend the appointments on the Orange County Sanitation District from Councilmember Selich to Mayor Pro Tem Hill. We would also request that council continue the appointments of the citizen members on the Aviation Committee, the July 4th West Newport Safety Planning Committee, and the West Coast, Newport Coast Advisory Committee, to allow my office to publish a notice and treat these appointments as unscheduled vacancies, and also to remove the appointments from voting for the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee, the Santa Ana River Crossing Sarks Committee, and the Growth Management Area 8 Committee, since those committees are no longer in existence.
A question for the city attorney. On the Newport Coast Advisory Committee, as I recall, it's the Newport Coast Homeowners Association or Master Association. One of them is, we're not the one that selects the representative. They are. Isn't that the case?
Well,
I mean, it's
chime in because I remember.
There is one mayor council confirmation appointment. The rest are by the Master Association.
Okay.
And we will need to open that up, obviously, to see if there are folks in the Newport Coast who would like to sign up for that. That's just for your information. That's a committee that doesn't meet often, but it still is an obligation of a pre-annexation agreement that we have that committee in place.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Daigle, you pulled this item?
Yes, several issues on the affordable housing task force. I realize because of past experience I'm seen to lead this effort, but if I can maybe demystify some things about housing elements. This is only an update. What the city has to do is simply plug in, well, not simply, but we have to plug in new charts. It's not a rewrite. We have a housing element whose basic shell has been survived litigation. State housing law is narrow and defined. The policy areas are we have to make sure that our goals are consistent with state law. So we had HCD come to SCAG, or SCAG did, and the department indicated that they're going to absolutely make this simple. They have an online template. They have a checklist. And basically, there's going to be certainty of review. And they had also the gubernatorial appointee for the governor, and he said we have a very exuberant legislature, and they're not going to be focusing on housing and arena reform. We're going to be trying to point them in another direction. So my thoughts are, Kim is very capable as our community development director, and she can handle it. Or another alternative is that we have a planning commission subcommittee. So that's based on my experience with housing, this being really an update and not a rewrite.
Well, I think all
would be interested. I know there's some other council members on it.
I know that we had earlier meetings when we were doing, what project was it, Mike, that when this task force met, and we actually were doing something very specific to Newport Beach and trying to figure out the number that they needed and how they could do it. That was a number of years ago.
Might have been a general plan update.
No, but it was a specific project that finally. Oh, it was it the one by the Marriott? Was that the one?
Could have been, yeah. Well, I think that the issue why it's on the agenda today is because we have a policy that establishes this committee. So I think you raised the issue as to whether we should continue to have the committee, but the fact of it is we have the committee now, and appointments are due, which is why it's on the agenda. Any other comments?
Yeah, I had some other comments, too. I'm just suggesting that there may be an alternative to no longer have the committee and have the staff do this.
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think we ought to have somebody have a look at it and come back to us with a recommendation on that.
Great. I appreciate your open mind to that. And then secondly, as with the rest of my colleagues, we all like to continue in policy areas that we've been working on, and I've been on the Finance Committee for 8 years and would like to be reappointed to that. And the mayor's reason was, well, you're not getting reappointed because you voted against the dock tax, and I just think that's completely wrong.
Well, I actually decided not to appoint you before you voted on the dock tax.
Well, that was the reason that you gave me, and after giving me that reason, you stormed off in a huff. So I also felt your demeanor could be improved as well.
Okay. Are there any further comments? Is there a motion?
Move the item.
Second. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, please vote. These will be as modified by the city clerk.
With Councilmember Daigle voting no, the motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Public comment.
No, one moment.
Madam City Clerk, do you want to read that?
Yes. Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Mr. Schroeder.
Yes, hello, Mayor Curry. My name is George Schroeder. I just have 2 quick announcements. First of all, tomorrow night, and that is January the 9th, for those of you watching this at home live, we would love to have you come out to our meeting at Speak Up Newport. Our topic is the Junior Lifeguard program. We're going to have 2 of the people who run that program. We meet at the Newport Beach Yacht Club. It begins at 5:30. All of the information is available at our website, speakupnewport.org. My second announcement is on Friday, February the 8th. We're having our 32nd annual Mayor's Dinner. It's at the Marriott Hotel. This event sells out very quickly every year, and we're actually ahead of schedule this year. We've had a very, very good response. So anybody who has any interest in attending that, I would encourage you to get your checks in. Again, all of the information is on the website, speakupnewport.org. 51 seconds. Thank you.
Well done. Next speaker, please.
Mr. Curry, George's attendance there reminded me, I wanted to add some information to a comment he made about Wi-Fi in the building. It's true, it's not here. We do expect it much earlier than June. It involves, it's broadcast through our own IT department. When the IT department physically moves the data center, we will have it here, and we expect that to happen hopefully at the end of February.
You? Yes.
Okay, great. Mayor Curry, members of council, city staff, first of all, Happy New Year and congratulations on our beautiful city hall. It's very exciting. And my name is Peggy Fort. I'm here tonight on behalf of the Newport Beach Restaurant Association Business Improvement District. And January is a very exciting time for the hospitality industry here in Newport Beach. I would just like to invite the community to our 7th annual Newport Beach Restaurant Week campaign, which takes place January 18th through the 27th. In conjunction with California Restaurant Month, our city is going to be participating in our annual culinary celebration with record participation from the restaurants this year. Over 70 restaurants have already signed up to participate, and the chefs are working hard at putting together some delicious 3-course fixed-price menus, all at bargain prices, about 25 to 60% off regular price points. So it's a great time for the community to go try a new restaurant out, lots of new establishments participating, or go visit an old favorite. And if you'd like to see the full list of participating restaurants, we encourage you to check out our website, newportbeachdining.com. You can click on Restaurant Week and even get a sneak peek of all the menus online. Last but not least, would like to personally invite the council to our VIP media reception tomorrow. Many of you have already RSVP'd. We hope to see you all there. It's going to be at the Shore American Seafood Grill, the newly reconcepted and grand opening restaurant for the restaurant at the Hyatt Regency from 5 to 7. So we hope to see you all tomorrow, and we hope to see the community at the 7th Annual Newport Beach Restaurant Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Peggy. Restaurant Week really is a great event. It's a chance to get out and try some new restaurants and really enjoy everything that Newport Beach has to offer. So I encourage everybody to get out and really enjoy it. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Council. Nice new council chamber. My name is Mark
and
Tabbert.
LEED certified, too, I might add.
What's that?
LEED certified, too, I might add, Mark.
My name is Mark Tabbert. I'm a citizen of Newport Beach for 14 years. And I want to announce that I made a New Year's resolution to participate in this forum on a regular, ongoing basis in 2013. I will do so to raise the issue of climate change in Newport Beach. My goal is to generate support from the Council and from the citizens of Newport to pass legislation we need to regain a stable climate. It is a mistake to think that the climate change we are experiencing is not man-made. It is a mistake to think that there is not a solution to global warming. It is a mistake to think that the solution would bring with it great hardship. I don't expect to accomplish my goal overnight, but in time I do believe that Newport Beach can play an instrumental leadership role in dealing with climate change. I say this in earnest and in complete seriousness. I am directed by a moral imperative at this point, based on what I've read, and I'm actually devoting the rest of my life to shifting the world towards a more sustainable environment, a more sustainable future. Of the environmental threats we face, climate has the shortest fuse. Climate change is the greatest challenge humankind has ever faced, and yet somehow this issue has become politicized. Republicans are famous for climate change denial, while Democrats are generally thought to be believers in climate change. This is not as it should be. Science should not be part of a political debate. Gay marriage and abortion are issues that understandably fall along party lines, but the science of climate change that we are experiencing is settled. CO2 released from the burning of fossil fuels adds energy and heat to our environment. The atmosphere, I'm sorry, I thought you were going to click the buzzer.
No, I don't have a buzzer.
The atmosphere carries with it more water. This is settled science. What the future holds, only time will tell. But climate change does not bode well for anyone anywhere in the world, no matter what climatologist you listen to. Larger, more intense, more frequent storm events, more floods, more droughts, more lightning, more fires. This is the future unless we act, and time is long overdue for America to step forward, to accept its leadership role, and to address climate change. Without our leadership, nothing will get done. I am, and I will be addressing this council and my community as a member of a group. The group I am a part of is the Orange County Interfaith, that's a different group, the Orange County chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby. The Citizens Climate Lobby, CCL, is an international nonprofit 501c3 and a 501c4 with chapters here and in Canada. Their website is www.citizensclimatelobby.org. And by the way, Citizens Climate Lobby has an introductory phone call every Wednesday night at 5 o'clock, our time. You can.
Thank you, Mr. Tabbert. We'll look forward to your other 3-minute commentaries in the weeks to come.
Mayor Curry.
Thank you.
Mr. Petros.
I would just point out that on behalf of the Orange County Council of Governments, I was the project manager for the Sustainable Community Strategy and SB 375 climate greenhouse gas legislation. And I just would like the public to know that as a result of that effort, the first of its kind in Orange County has now 16 different strategies to address climate change and greenhouse gas reduction. I would also like the public to know that throughout the year-long process of developing that strategy, Newport Beach staff was present and participated in that process. There are over 220 active projects that cities in the county undertake, many of them done here in Newport Beach, that we are already invested in. So I appreciate Mr. Tabbert's comments, but I want the public to know that this city is already engaged in that process.
Thank you, Mr.
Could I just comment real quickly that, Tony, I appreciate that comment, and I've
Thank you,
heard from
Mr. Tabbert.
I'll come back.
Okay.
Thank you.
As you promised. Are there any other speakers? Please come forward. Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Oral reports from City Council members on committee activities. Councilmember Gardner.
Just a notice that the Coastal Bay Water Quality Committee will not be meeting this month because we are reconstituting and we don't have our membership yet.
Mr. Petros.
No.
Mr. Hill.
No report.
Councilmember Daigle.
As mentioned earlier, attended the SCAG meeting where we actually have talked quite a bit about SB 375, and absolutely that was just a real heavy lift to do all those regional plans. And then the visit by HCD and their assurance that they're trying to streamline government and provide certainty of review. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hint.
Yes, a report on the inaugural meeting of the Balboa Village Advisory Committee, which was held on December the 13th at 3:30 p.m. in the Exploration offices down in Balboa Village. And it was a very good meeting. We addressed the residential permit parking program that's part of the concept plan for improvements to the village, and matured a recommendation to council that I think will be coming to council at the next meeting for consideration.
That is correct.
Yeah. So that's good. So checked our first box in that meeting. We also went through the master plan priorities, or the master plan, I should say, for the committee, which is a multi-year program, and reviewed that and made some very small adjustments to that, and then focused on the master plan priorities for the first year, those things that we want to get done in the next 12 months. And our commitment is, at every single meeting, to have an action item that matures out of that committee so that we, in fact, move things along as promptly as we can. I'm very pleased with the enthusiastic support and participation of the citizens that are on this committee, and I really look forward to making tremendous progress. I appreciate staff support to this committee. It'll be vital to our success. So I'm very pleased to report we had a good meeting and we're off and running.
Great.
And thanks to the mayor, by the way, for joining me on that committee.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Mr. Yen. Mr. Selich.
All my committees took a vacation during Christmas.
And I have no reports. We'll now move to public hearings, Uptown Newport project.
Mayor Curry, I'm afraid that as a result of some business associations that I have had in the past with the applicant, I will have to recuse myself from this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Petros. Staff report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Curry, members of the council. This is a public hearing for the Uptown Newport project, which is located on Jamboree Road in our airport area. And this is a public hearing to consider the adoption of a notice of intention to overrule the Airport Land Use Commission's determination of inconsistency for this project. This is an unusual request. This is the first time that the City of Newport Beach has had a project reviewed by the Airport Land Use Commission with a resulting determination of inconsistency. So this is a new process, but it is a process that other cities have undergone in the County of Orange in response to such a determination.
Kim, may I interrupt for just a second? Is anyone else having trouble hearing?
Actually, I am.
It seems like your volume is a bit low, or perhaps you can speak a little more closely to the mic. Thanks.
Is that better? I'll. Okay. Mr. Campbell's put up on the screen an aerial showing the location of the Uptown Newport project. As I indicated, it's adjacent to Jamboree Road, and the nearest major cross intersection is with Campus Drive. It is a 25-acre project which consists of the redevelopment of existing industrial and office uses with the intent of building a mixed-use residential project. As indicated on the screen above or before you, it's intended to be composed of 1,244 residential units, 11,500 square feet of retail uses, and 2 one-acre public parks. As you can see on the aerial, if you can just move back one slide, thank you. The project is located easterly of the John Wayne Airport and is within the John Wayne Airport's area of influence. And because the proposed project includes a legislative action, specifically amendment to the zoning provisions that are currently in place for the project, it does require review by the Airport Land Use Commission for consistency with the Airport Environs Land Use Plan. I do not want to use a lot of acronyms, but I may slip, and sometimes the Airport Environs Land Use Plan is referred to the A-Loop, and sometimes the Airport Land Use Commission is commonly referred to as the A-LUC. Because, as I indicated, the project does require a zoning amendment, state law requires that that zoning amendment be referred to the Airport Land Use Commission for their review and recommendation for consistency. That review occurred in October, and at the conclusion of the public hearing on that consistency finding, the majority of the Airport Land Use Commission found that the project was inconsistent with the Airport Environs Land Use Plan. The California Public Utility Code includes a process for when a project receives such a determination that the applicable city can initiate to overrule that determination. And it is a two-step process, and tonight is step one. The first step of that process is for the City Council to adopt a notice of intention that is then sent to both the Airport Land Use Commission as well as the State Division of Aeronautics. The intent of this resolution is to put on notice to both of those agencies that the City Council is considering or has initiated the process to overrule the Airport Land Use Commission's finding of inconsistency. The once that notice is sent to those two agencies, there's a 30-day period where both agencies can respond in writing to the resolution, and then no sooner than 45 days, the City Council could begin to take deliberations and actions on the proposed project. It is important to note, and it's included within the staff report, if the City Council chooses to adopt this resolution this evening, it does not convey any intent to, in the future, to adopt or approve the project. It is only beginning the process. And I think it's also important to note that if during the project deliberations at a later public hearing time, the City Council does choose to overrule the Airport Land Use Commission's action, it does not affect the city's standing as a consistent agency with the Airport Environs Land Use Plan.
Kim, does it also allow us at the Assembly to say, hey, we don't want it to be that high, just because we don't, for some reason or other, we can still make those changes?
That is correct. That is correct. It only begins the process. The City Council will be considering the project once the Planning Commission concludes their review of the project. So I have stepped a little bit ahead. The Planning Commission has held one study session and 2 public hearings on the project. They have taken a number of straw votes, which are included within your staff report. They have continued the hearing to February 7th, and should they conclude their recommendations, the earliest that this project could come back to the City Council would be on February 26th. We have included, attached to the staff report, a very detailed resolution with facts and findings which we believe are sufficient for the City Council to adopt at a later date when you actually take an override or overrule action, if that would be the City Council's intention. I would be happy to go into detail about any of those facts and findings if that would be your desire. And it's also important to note that the Public Utilities Code does require a 2/3 vote of the City Council in order to pass both this notice of intention to overrule as well as the subsequent overrule process that would occur at a later date. And given that we are a 7-member City Council, it would require at least 5 members to vote in favor of the action.
Thank you. Questions?
Mayor Curry?
Councilmember Gardner.
Oh, I was so busy trying to get your attention. My mind's gone blank. Go ahead.
Councilmember Daigle.
I serve on the commission, and there's a couple of things I want to point out. The first is that the staff of the commission, the ALUC commission, did recommend approval. So in their professional analysis, they believe that the commission could make the findings to meet the Environs plan. So I wanted to point that out. And secondly is the response from the commission was identical to the treatment that the City of Irvine received when they were doing similar structures in that area. So it's not sort of unusual what we're doing in that regard.
Thank you. Mr. Selich?
Yeah, I don't know if this is for you, Councilwoman Daigle, or for Kim, but in looking at the staff report, I didn't see any specific reasons for the Land Use Commission to recommend that this project not be considered consistent. Was it the noise or the height or both? And what did they base that on? I didn't see anything that they based it on. Is there anything?
It was my recollection, and maybe the applicant could have additional insights and observations, was that initially it was height, and they indicated a desire to drop the height, and they said, well, really it's just residential character, even though there's commercial buildings, because it was pointed out by the applicant that nearby are the Connexton Towers. So we already have heights in this area, similar structure heights. So it wasn't height, it was the fact that these structures are going to be occupied by residents, and I think as you indicated, you know, they may be more sensitive to noise, they were there longer and those types of things. So it was really more of the residential use that caused them to vote that.
No, well, from what I remember, and taking a look at the noise contours off the airport, this residential units are well outside those noise contours, aren't they?
You're absolutely right, and that's why I voted to support the project. But yeah, that's absolutely correct, Councilman Selich.
Mayor Curry? remembered. There was suggested for our city attorney that by doing this, we are somehow putting the city in harm's way, that we are changing the liability. Would you comment on that?
Yeah, the provision that allows for immunity for the airport operator does not shift liability to the city. It's just an immunity for them as well, as similar to the immunities the city has when it makes land use decisions.
Thank you. Any other council questions? Let me open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Please come forward.
Mayor Curry and members of the council, my name is Jim Mosier. I think adopting this notice of intent to override at this point is not in the city's best interest. I think we would be going down the wrong path. To Councilman Selich's question, I also was curious what really was behind the discussion at the Airport Land Use Committee meeting, of which there are some minutes in your staff packet on pages 75 to 77. I couldn't make out a whole lot about from that. So on Friday, I asked if I could listen to the recording, as the Brown Act requires that they do, and they kindly made that available to me this morning. And I listened to it this afternoon, and I found it enlightening and somewhat different than the picture that we're getting here. The commissioners were concerned about the height, but they didn't absolutely reject the project. City Planner Ung asked what height might be acceptable. They thought 15 stories was too high. 10 stories might be okay. The commissioners were concerned that small planes are climbing and turning over this area, and they didn't want this to become a solid wall of buildings that an aviator who had a mishap would have to plow into rather than being able to steer around. And one of their primary concerns was that back in October, this is not very far along in the Planning Commission hearings, and they were concerned that they would be pre-approving some project that they didn't really understand what they were approving, and something quite different might be built. The staff expressed the Airport Land Use Commission staff expressed a willingness to work with the applicant to find something that would be acceptable to the Airport Land Use Commission, and they had the option either of continuing the item or coming back with a new application. At 30 minutes and 38 seconds into this recording, Councilmember Daigle, who is on the commission, asked two questions. One, if there was any prejudice at that point back in October of denying this, and she was told no, there was not, so they can come back again, no loss. And the second question was what the overrule process was, and a voice that I cannot identify for sure, I think it's one of the other commissioners, made the observation that if the city proceeded with the overrule process, which seemed a little premature at that point, since they hadn't actually absolutely rejected the project, that any liability would leave John Wayne Airport and go to the city. And another voice, which I assume is the voice of the Airport Land Use Commission's attorney, said, yes, that is correct. So you have here two different opinions about this liability issue. We know attorneys working for committees tend to tell you what you want to hear, but you have two different things here, and you have to rely on your intuition. If we're the body approving this, it would seem that we have some consequence or liability for what we do, and it would seem to me that the prudent thing is to do as the commissioners and the staff there seem to recommend, is to try to get back to them a proposal that they would be happy with. So whether or not it's true that the liability is shifting, we would get something that is acceptable to them, and we would not have that concern about the liability. So I think the project should go back to them, and only then should you consider overriding their decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Other comments? Please come forward.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. My name is Brian Rupp. I'm with the Shop-Off Group, here on behalf of Uptown Newport, the project applicant. I attended the October 18th ALUC hearing, and in preparing for tonight, I just wanted to take a few moments to add to the staff report, which staff did an excellent job summarizing what can be a very complicated topic here tonight. A few of the excerpts from the Airport Land Use Commission staff report. The Uptown Newport project site is located within noise contours for John Wayne Airport, where residential and commercial uses are considered normally consistent within the 60 CNEL noise contour. The Uptown Newport project is located within the Safety Zone 6 for John Wayne Airport. The proposed mixed uses for the Uptown Newport project will be compatible with this zone. In addition, the FAA conducted studies for the building heights. The FAA aeronautical study conducted for the project found a determination of no hazard to air navigation. The proposed building heights are all consistent with the building height limits established by the Airport Land Use Commission, with no building heights exceeding the 206-foot elevation. Based on the ALUC staff review, the proposed planned community development plan for Uptown Newport, including the city's proposed additional language restricting building heights to below 206 feet AMSL, would be consistent with the Commission's John Wayne A-Loop. None of the findings required for a determination of inconsistency were found during the ALUC deliberations. And it appears that the ALUC's determination of inconsistency lacks specific criteria from the ALUC, and the determination was based solely on the ALUC's desire to restrict residential uses within the John Wayne Airport area. In addition, the consistency finding that the Newport Beach general plan is consistent with the A-Loop is contradictory to the ALUC's recent finding of inconsistency for the Uptown Newport project. We're here tonight to answer any questions, provide any clarifying remarks you may need to make your decision, and we respectfully request a favorable decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring this back to the City Council. Is there a motion?
Move the action.
Motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and second to approve the item. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. Please vote.
And while council is voting, I'm also going to read the titles for the ordinances and resolutions from consent calendar. So item 3, ordinance number 2012-23, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach approving zoning code amendment number CA 2012-002 for pre-zoning and unincorporated Emerson Island. Item 4, resolution number 2012-1, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach adopting an updated designated employees list for 2013. Item 5, resolution number 2013-2, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach amending Council Policy A6 relating to the City Council meetings and Council Policy A10 relating to procedural rules for the conduct of City Council meetings. And then for this item, item 14, resolution number 2013-3, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach notifying the Orange County Airport Land Use Commission and the State Division of Aeronautics of the city's intention to find that the Uptown Newport project is consistent with the purposes of the State Aeronautics Act and to overrule the Orange County Airport Land Use Commission's determination that the Uptown Newport project is inconsistent with the Airport Environs Land Use Plan for the John Wayne Airport. With that, and with Councilmember Petros abstaining, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Item 16, Corona Del Mar Lane Merge relocation trial. 15, excuse me.
Good evening, council members, mayor. Tonight we want to bring back this item that we've discussed a couple times and want to go through the traffic analyst tonight. This public hearing has to do with the Corona Del Mar Lane Merge relocation. On your screens, you'll see a PowerPoint slide, and to refresh the audience and others, views of what we're looking at today. This is the conceptual plan approved by council back in February 2012. This plan has to do with moving the merge lane that is currently located to the east of MacArthur next to Carnation and taking it to the west and starting the merge at Acacia and going from 3 lanes to 2 lanes at MacArthur. It's part of the revitalization effort. This plan was developed to beautify the entry of Corona del Mar, called the Corona del Mar entry. Next slide has a detail of the area right at MacArthur and Coast Highway, and this is between Carnation and Begonia. This is kind of the envision of what they would do with the widened area that would be developed with the removal of that 1 lane and the parking. And this concept, again, was approved by council. When this concept came for budgeting in the CIP process, there was a lot of public comments and concerns and controversy about possibly having a lot more traffic delay. So when we went into the CIP process, council decided to budget $26,000 to do a trial lane merge review to see how it actually would work if we actually remove the 3rd lane, move the merge lane down towards Acacia, and remove the parking. So on the top of the screen, you'll see a slide that kind of shows that trial. This trial consisted of delineators and striping. We actually wanted to make it look exactly as if it would work in the field and see how it would work. The trial was installed back in June of 2012, and we ran the trial for 4 months, from July through October. And at which time staff took our field reviews of it. We have our new closed-circuit TV system that we did with the modernization set up at that intersection. We did reviews in the field and also on the cameras. So the trial ended in October of 2012. And at that point, we wanted to talk about how the results were. So we brought this back to council, and for various reasons, we put this off till November and now until tonight. So what we'd like to go through is a little of our observations and the recommendations on how this trial worked. At this point, I'd like to introduce Tony Bryan, our traffic engineer, and he's going to be the one who actually did a lot of the observations with his staff, and he'll go through and describe what he found through the trial.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I think it's important to note that what we did as far as looking at the traffic and any recommendations that come forward was simply based on observations that we made in the field and through our CCTV cameras. And we did this basically, what we looked at was every weekend, Saturday and Sundays in the month of July, and also 1 weekend in August, and then the Labor Day weekend in September, with some PM peak hour observations from the office as well. What we noticed as we observed the traffic was that we saw basically during the weekend peak hours, which ran between 1 p.m. and 3:30 p.m. was the range of the weekend peak hour. What we saw was a consistent backup of traffic beyond Avocado. This was pretty much every single cycle that we saw this backup. And this was something that was different than what we had typically seen before as far as having regular backups beyond Avocado. So what that did was it adds in the Avocado signal into the operation along Coast Highway, and it adds delay. That's one of the observations that we saw. Some more photos that we took and that we presented to you. This is MacArthur on the July the 8th, which is a Sunday. And one thing to notice in the bottom left of the photo is that in this case the light had changed to red. The car that's in the crosswalk is actually in the intersection, and there is traffic within the intersection, and there are pedestrians legally crossing, and they're having to go between cars in the situation. We didn't see it often, but we did occasionally see that when the backup occurred and continued into the intersection itself. The next slide shows the situation where, as it exists today, there's essentially a de facto third left turn lane, if you will. There are 2 southbound left turns on MacArthur, and what happens is that because there are 3 lanes southbound, or call it eastbound on Coast Highway, as the left turners enter the intersection, some of the drivers swing out wide to go to the curb lane. Some of them will continue south on Coast Highway, and some of those the traffic will then make a right turn onto Carnation. So there's drivers that are trying to utilize what is essentially a de facto third lane. This is a situation, just an example of intersection congestion that we regularly saw as we were observing. Backups within the intersection. Here's a car that is stopped, and then there's left turners on Coast Highway trying to go up MacArthur, and they're essentially stopped from completing that left turn.
So we don't have any of this congestion under the existing conditions?
We don't see as much of that type of situation, and I'll get further into why this situation exacerbated that type of backup. This basically points out that situation where the cars are turning right to Carnation. On the upper right of the photograph, you'll see the cars that are continuing and then making the rights onto Carnation. There's a fair number of cars that come from the southbound left turn at MacArthur, continue and make that right turn onto Carnation. And basically by changing the lane drop location, and then that third lane through the intersection is no longer there, it adds to the backup, because you've got that situation where the left turners are swinging out wide, utilizing what is a de facto third lane, and then making the right turns. So they're taking away some of the congestion by that lane being there. Here's some more observations. This is September the 2nd, and this is the Labor Day weekend. And clearly, we would expect on a holiday weekend more traffic, and we did see that, obviously. The slide on the right shows traffic backed up to Newport Center Drive. This is the worst situation we saw. But essentially, we would expect there to be traffic backups beyond Avocado, and we did see that again on non-holiday summer weekends. But changing the lane drop is pushing this back and just adding further to the queue.
Tony, that picture on the right, the signalized intersection is Avocado, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Another thing to notice in that photograph on the right, you'll see at the bottom the 2 left turn lanes on Coast Highway, and they're empty. And there's a reason for that, and we would see this on occasion for the high volume of through traffic that wanted to continue on Coast Highway. The people that wanted to get into that left turn lane to make the left onto MacArthur sometimes couldn't get to the left turn lane. So you would see a traffic backup, but people wanting to make the left couldn't get to that left turn pocket. Again, the one thing that was interesting, and we did collect traffic volumes along with doing the observations with this. The traffic volumes that we collected were actually slightly lower in the summer than they were in the month of May. And that's an interesting thing to note when we reviewed the congestion on the highway, is that basically if we would see traffic congestion and the merge would be longer and the queue would be longer during the summer with actually a lower volume, then we said that essentially if you've changed the volumes are actually lower in the summer but the queue is higher, then it must be the change in the merge location that's causing that queue. What was also done with this review was a pretty extensive public outreach and a public survey. And there was an effort here. We really wanted to get opinions from the residents and from the public and any people that are commuting along Coast Highway to get what their comments were. and provide that information to the City Council. And again, like I said, it's important to note that the staff recommendations were based on observations. They were not based on the public survey information. This is just what was collected. We're just putting it together and we're presenting it to the City Council for their review.
I went back and read every email I received, and I think I got more than 30. And it was really interesting to me that this was an experiential thing. I mean, this isn't something like looking at something and saying, oh, well, I like it or I don't like it. This is something, people experiencing it, driving through it, and totally a huge spectrum. Some people absolutely thought it was the best thing, it improved traffic flow, and others complained completely that it just screwed everything up. And yet they're driving the same street and presumably having similar experience, but not at all. So it must have been the time of day, I don't know. But some people thought it worked much, much better.
Well, that's correct. We're just going simply based on comments we received. And we do get a mixed bag. You'll see the overall satisfaction. You'll see a mixed bag, 24 very or 15 very satisfied. So it does depend on that driver or that resident's particular experience, and it can vary on the time of day. Another important part of this was the parking for that section of Coast Highway, specifically within the intersection at MacArthur. There were 8 parking spaces that are in this intersection. With the trial, we removed those 8 parking spaces. And our observations, we did not ourselves as staff see parking issues, transfer parking into the neighborhood. But again, we were observing it during the daytime. The nighttime uses are much higher with the restaurants in the area. So we saw some comments coming from the public that they indicated that there was parking shifted into the residential neighborhood, but staff did not observe that during the daytime. Basically, regardless of the outcome of this project, we would recommend for safety purposes that the 8 spaces that are parked within the intersection be relocated. And that's simply safety alone. There are no other intersections within the city where there's 2 arterial roadways that come together and there's parking within the intersection itself, and this is a T intersection given, but we don't have anything consistent with that. And we are seeing about 2 accidents per year that are related to turn movement accidents, and we don't want to end up with a situation where any kind of type of turning vehicle could end up, in an accident with a parked vehicle there. So we think it's safe to move those parking spaces outside of the intersection, and what we're looking at and proposing is that they can be relocated to Carnation Avenue. 6 of those spaces can be relocated there with the designation of Carnation Avenue as a one-way roadway southbound between Coast Highway and 4th.
Can they valet in that area?
Typically, we don't valet on-street parking, so I would say no.
One way on Carnation, as far as El Ranchito, how would people get into their parking lot if they weren't coming south on Coast Highway?
Well, we would probably have to work with El Ranchito and have directions to get to their parking lot via Carnation, but that's something we would have to work out with El Ranchito to determine how that can happen. But as far as the relocation of these parking spaces on Coast Highway, we looked at and determined that that's an option, is to use Carnation for that.
So with that, and talking to our traffic staff and looking at it, and finding that our field and closed-circuit TV observations showed that we did have some negative impacts from traffic, particularly in summer months. We did have traffic counts that supported those observations. We did show that there was impacts to MacArthur due to that loss of that 3rd lane going east of MacArthur where they merge. combined with resident surveys, and as Tony's pointed out, they were kind of mixed. They were all over. There was probably more towards the negative side than the positive, but we had people that liked it, as Mayor or Councilmember Gardner mentioned. With that, we're thinking that we would propose to reject the lane as it's shown. We're concerned that there are traffic impacts. So the recommendations we provided for you tonight would be that, recognizing there were some negative impacts, that we would suggest that we reject the concept as shown and maybe look at some options. And the first option you could look at is maybe just leave it the way it is today. As Tony mentioned, though, we still have parking issues that go through that intersection. They are a safety concern. So that would be your option A. Option B was another thought we had to help basically meet the goal of the landscaping and improve the entrance, is that you could just remove the parking and you could take that 8-foot area and you could landscape that or increase sidewalk there and still leave the lanes as they are. That would be an option you could look at. And then the third was, if you want to give us any other direction to look at on that, that would be the recommendations on our removal of the lane drop there. I just also wanted to note, too, just there was an error in your report. Pages 30 through 35 are not really part of this report. They were inadvertently printed with this report, and they had to do with another item from another night.
Thank you. Any questions for staff? Mr.
Mayor
Curry.
I took the opportunity to review the general plan on this item, too. And while the general plan land use element clearly calls out the Corona Del Mar Village as a pedestrian area, and there's an effort to really bring pedestrian amenities into the area, the circulation element, though, does call this a 6-lane arterial. The intersection that provides for level of service in our general plan clearly calls this a 3-lane approach in each direction. So I would suggest that anything less than that would be outside of what our general plan currently has. There are also, and I'd like, Dave, if you or Tony could comment on the consistency with the OCTA and PAH process and what that may do to funding of our capital projects.
Yes, thank you. And during this process, we did take this transition plan to OCTA and explained it to them what we're doing. They had some real concerns on it, to the point that they actually sent me a letter saying I might be in violation. If we are to modify this, we would have to go through probably an MPH amendment, is what they'd say, that basically says we're going to downgrade that segment of highway to, let's say, a 2-lane facility. Not that they wouldn't approve that, it just has to go through a process. Should they not approve it and we go ahead and do it anyway, then we'd be outside of our Measure M2 ordinance, basically saying we'll be consistent with the Master Plan of Arterial Highways and OCTA's view of that. Which could subject us to some loss of Measure M dollars. We're subject to, it might just be that roadway miles or some other items. And it's a small segment of roadway. It's probably less than a quarter of a mile that would be in the calculation there.
Councilmember Gardner.
If we left the sidewalk the width it is right now, but we did remove the parking, then we would have room to do some landscaping without any traffic problems, without any OCTA problems. I mean, we would have the same number of lanes and everything, but we would just have some landscaping, and we would have to replace the parking.
This is correct. You have currently a 12-foot sidewalk, and if you took the 8-foot parking lane, you'd have 20 feet to work with. You could do some form of landscaping like the concept, maybe not as big of a walkway area, or some combination of that. The parking would be the key. We'd need to replace that. As Tony mentioned, there may be an ability to put that on Carnation, but we would have to look at that further.
But we do want to remove the parking. That seems to be your recommendation.
Yes, at some point we want to do that because we do believe it's a safety hazard and we have to solve that. There is a larger conversation, as you know, about parking in Corona Del Mar overall, and we were hoping to kind of put all that together.
Right.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Selich.
If we did the parking lane as landscaping, how would that affect the bike lanes going through there?
The bike lane would still be, we're planning on putting a striped bike lane through the intersection, but it would have to drop as it goes past Carnation. There's no bike lane going through Corona Del Mar, as you know, it's a share.
I'm just talking about over on the, I guess overall the parking is being eliminated in that area.
if I'm reading it right.
In front of the bungalow and those places?
Right. We would move the curb out 8 feet, and we'd still have the ability to put, I believe, a 5-foot striped bike lane in there.
Questions? All right, let me open this up for public comment. Anyone, member of the public wishing to speak on this matter, please come forward. Identify yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Yo, 604 Irish. We're enjoying our 50th year in our Corona Del Mar village. And I'd like to, as most of you know, I was a member of the Citizens Advisory Panel, and I'd like to express the thought that the majority of our panel members are all enthusiastic about the project as presented. We appreciate the traffic study. I also went to spent a morning at the farmers market in Corona Del Mar, and I showed the plan, and I had about 20 people per hour come and look at it. I had one negative comment. I had about 30 people that signed a petition, and all of them said, "It's great, it's wonderful," etc. The traffic study is good and thorough, but I think it's a little biased. No project is perfect. I think there's some items that came up which we expected that they would, and that they could probably be resolved to a certain degree. The bottom line, the way I read the study, is that there is no loss of service in this study, and that's the loss of service is the way that usually planning is looked at. The master plan that we have, it's above that, and I think that's an important item that you should consider, and we really hope that you look at the positive aspects of this plan and don't worry about all the little tiny details. Personally, as a member of the village, I don't drive on Sundays down Coast Highway, so I think a lot of us don't do that. There's always going to be traffic, and it's a great plan. It's going to be important for the village of Corona Del Mar, and we hope you approve it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Scott Laidlaw, and I'm a Newport Beach resident. And I actually live in West Newport, and my place of business is in Corona Del Mar Village. So this is my commute. And I have to come clean. I did not fill out a survey. I should have, but especially since I'm also on the Business Improvement District Board in Corona Del Mar. And so I know better. But I didn't fill out a survey, and I think I probably represent a lot of people who didn't fill out surveys. And I myself did not have a negative experience in the 120 days that I commuted with the test merger up. And I just want to reiterate what Ron said, and it wasn't really brought up very clearly in the staff presentation, and that's this notion of level of service. And there was very specific numbers and calculations done on level of service. And I can read from page 4 of the staff report. It says the calculated levels of service show essentially no changes in the level of service before and after the trial lane drop. In all cases, the level of service is acceptable per the city general plan guidelines. Now, I don't want to take it out of context because the following sentence is, as expected, the best way to analyze the potential or impact associated with this relocation of the lane merge is truly observational and not by using calculated levels of service. So I struggle a little bit with that. I'm an architect. I like numbers, and we have an engineering department. So I don't think we can dismiss the numbers. And the numbers very clearly demonstrate that there is no loss or significant reduction in the level of service. And the other thing I'd like to point out is the amount of public input, and as I said, I'm guilty, but it's very, very low. If you look at the traffic flow of, on a daily basis, at 25,000 vehicles a day, you have a 0.2% input with all of the surveys and emails and what have you. If you look at the total trips, which is 3 million trips over the 4 months, you have 0.02% input. So I don't think we can put too much weight on that, especially since you've heard some additional kind of testimony that there is outside support. And so what I would just like to encourage you guys to do is look at the benefits, as Ron pointed out. This is without a doubt one of the two primary entrances, if you will, to the city. And so I think a beautification project here is good one for the city at large. I think this is even a more important entry point now that City Hall has been relocated, and the sort of overpass entrance from Newport Boulevard to Coast Highways is going to be a tough one to ever make very nice. So this is really a great opportunity overall for the city. Secondly, it's a great amenity for the village in Corona Del Mar, the businesses in Corona Del Mar, consistent with the walking character of the general plan and encouraging pedestrian activity. And thirdly, it's a great connector. It safens the crosswalk distance by reducing it significantly, and that connection between this facility here, Newport Center at large, and the Corona Del Mar neighborhoods and business district would just be greatly enhanced. So I'd like to encourage you to stay consistent with the original plan and let us move forward to the next steps. Thank you.
The next speaker, please. All come at once.
Mayor Curry, members of the City Council, my name is Keith Dawson. I've been a resident of Corona Del Mar for 40-plus years. I brought a visual aid, not a refreshment. I'm very much in favor of the Merge Lane project. We've worked hard on the vision plan from the beginning. The Merge Lane project and the area that it includes has been part of the plan. I remember when we were fighting so hard for the city to take back PCH and all the opposition. We fought through that. I don't know that any of you regret that now. Maybe you do. I haven't seen it from the city's point of view. But we were able to landscape the medians. There were residents who came out in opposition to that. There were residents who said, well, the emergency vehicles can't get through if you take the painted medians and you put in planters like we did. I don't know that there's many people today who would regret that we did that. And all we're asking now is to continue with the plan that we've been working on for so long. And here's my visual aid. I'm no traffic engineer, that's for sure. But this is a bottleneck, a bottle with a bottleneck. Here's the west end of it. All we're doing is asking to move the bottleneck about a block or so west. There's always going to be traffic. There's 3 lanes coming into Corona Del Mar. There's 3 lanes going into Seal Beach. Every time there's a merger of 3 to 2, there's a bottleneck. Where it is, frankly, I don't think it makes that much difference. But again, I'm not a traffic engineer. We've got a bottleneck situation there. We're looking at quality of life in Corona Del Mar. So I'm asking you to approve this project without modification. I think we can do it. I think it's consistent with the merge lane or with the vision plan that we've been working on for so long. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good evening, Mayor Curry and members of the City Council. My name is Jim Walker. I am the owner of the bungalow. Frankly, I have mixed feelings about this proposal, and I guess I'm going to have to quote from the ad for Mercedes. It's either the best or nothing. And what I mean by that is simply that I think that as I sat with the members of the bid, and we have worked hard on this proposal of the lane reduction and also the expansion of the sidewalks and the proposed landscaping, and I think it's a great plan. The thing that I have issue with is if that plan's not going to go forward and what staff is recommending as an alternate plan and then eliminating the parking on Pacific Coast Highway and possibly using Carnation as a supplement,
There's a problem in that during this time of the study where myself and the other businesses on from Begonia to Carnation, namely Rothschild's, the Wine Gallery, the State Farm Insurance Company, Golden Spoon, and myself, did experience a issue with business as we lost that parking. The day the parking study was removed, business went up. I think that to remove that parking and try and use Carnation as a supplement is not the answer. I frankly think that Carnation should be used in addition to the 9 spaces that we currently have. As most of you know, and particularly I think Nancy and some of you that have been down in that area and have really taken a look at the parking issue, the north part of CDM has a major parking shortage. And any parking that we lose is really hard to replace, and it only becomes a detriment to our business. And so I would really ask you, before you make that decision, jump to a conclusion, that you take a really close study at the impact that it's going to have on the business community in that particular part of Corona Del Mar. I realize that there are some that feel there is a safety issue. I think 2 accidents a year. I'd like to compare that to what happens in any part of Corona Del Mar or Newport Beach. Secondly, I feel that there's some that feel that, yes, we have a traffic flow problem there. Well, we've had a traffic flow problem there for the past 30 or 40 years, and I haven't seen a really major issue. I think that if we take this parking away, the merchants are going to have a cash flow problem. And I would really ask you to consider that before you make a change in the parking and think about taking that parking away. Our preference would be to see us go through with the full project, which I think has a total offset and a greater impact on perhaps increasing pedestrian traffic and making Corona Del Mar really a significant place to see and to appreciate. So back to what I said before, the best or nothing. Thank you.
May I ask a question of the last speaker?
Sure.
Jim? I guess you've confused me a little bit.
Okay.
You said that I think you said that you would urge approval of the project as it is designed, but then I've also heard you say don't remove the parking, but the project as designed removes the parking.
That's true. But I think, Rush, the reason that I'm saying that, and I'm speaking at this point for myself, the other merchants that I've spoken to have a real issue with the loss of parking. The reason I said that, it's really kind of the best or nothing, or to do the project by which it was designed, is because I think there's a trade-off. I believe that there's a trade-off, that if we do it, and we do it in the grand style that we have recommended, the trade-off is that maybe we'll get more pedestrian traffic, and consequently it will offset the loss of parking. Without that, there's no offset.
So therefore, your conclusion is doing a hybrid doesn't work?
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, council persons, the BID and the local community have been working on this merge lane project for over 2 years. The staff report has taken a negative view for the proposal. I have stated from the very beginning, and I talked to the staff and a couple councilmen about this many times, I felt that we were kind of getting short shrift on it because the traffic management system, we really should have tried to help this project, at least try it. They say it won't work, it won't help it, but we should have changed the traffic signals all through Corona Mar and given a chance to see if that would work. They say, the staff says, well, it wouldn't make any difference. They don't think it would make any difference. I think it would have made a big difference because so maybe you shift the traffic from one place to another a little bit, but I think it would have been a way to test this instead of just making one change and not making any other changes. So I think that's a major flaw in the study in the first place, and that causes an extreme backup at times. And like a couple people said, there's 52 or so against and 1824, so 15 people, I don't think it makes much difference in regard to this process. We talked to resident association, we talked to the citizens, we talked to the public. And so I think that's important. I think number one is that these few months are the worst months of the year as far as traffic, so they picked the day after Labor Day. So, I mean, there's a lot of, maximum effects when you see all those cars on all those streets at different times of the busiest time of the year in the area. And some of the facts on page 6 of the October staff report are not correct. The previous test that we did, we had cones and no parking all the way up to Carnation. And one of the flaws on this that made it a little bigger problem is that they did the mark off all the way around to Carnation, right to the edge, instead of right now where there's red and nobody can park for at least one car length when you make the turn to Carnation. So now, when we had this study, they had to go up and make a right 90-degree turn, so that could cause some backup on those people trying to get down Carnation. So that part of the staff report is incorrect from the previous study. I think this would make a magnificent entry into Newport Beach, and if for some reason you do not approve this project, as one businessman said, the businesses there are adamantly opposed to having this parking removed in that area unless this can be redone. We've had some of the businesses come to previous meetings and the council meetings in favor of the project as we propose it, but they feel it would be tough in regard to the parking being removed and nothing else done on that corner. So I think the only ultimate possibility would be approve this as it is, or it might end up to be, to help the businesses, just a small landscape situation instead of maybe 20-foot sidewalk landscape. So anyway, that's the thoughts from the bid, and I'm the Business Improvement District Chairman. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. My name is George Schroeder. I didn't expect to speak on this topic this evening. I think everybody who has spoken is a member of the Corona Del Mar bid, so they have a vested interest. They've been working on this project. They wanted to go through. These are all good people. Most of them are friends of mine. It's with a heavy heart that I come up here and say that I don't believe it's a good concept, and I believe this staff is very responsive to groups like them. If there was a way staff could find to support what they want, they would have found it. Okay, and as a 25-year resident, my offices are right here in Newport Center. I drive that intersection all the time. When that traffic study was done, it backed up. I mean, those pictures are there. This is to move a bottleneck, it doesn't make any difference. If we were moving the bottleneck from Goldenrod to Carnation, doesn't make any difference. Okay, but this is an intersection where you're going to move the bottleneck where it functions now because all the traffic, so much of it wants to interact with MacArthur. Okay, so to push a bottleneck beyond that where perhaps a third of it wants to go, I mean, when the 55 freeway ends at Costa Mesa, we have a mess. We know we have a mess. If this council goes ahead and narrows this intersection down, the 25 years I've lived here, we've always strived for a level of service, and I don't believe it has no impact. And I also know that in Newport Center, we have hundreds of homes coming online in the next 5-10 years. I don't know if it's 500, 600, 700 homes. And then also up in the airport area, we have hundreds of homes. Okay, these homes are going to be coming down these streets. And, our population is only going to increase. We can't, right now you're looking at a traffic study across from the current City Hall that will involve probably taking out parking, maybe, trying to widen that intersection to create a choke point here where one doesn't exist, and to go against county agencies and to try and negotiate with them. I also sympathize with the business owners. He is right. If you take out the street parking, when a person is driving by something, if it's easy to park and go in, they'll do it. If parking isn't easy, there's someplace else they can go to. So that's a real concern. I hope you don't make a choke point residents don't believe it's going to happen. We all saw the study. We all saw us get backed up. We thought, well, there you have it. You know, as for the calls, I'm surprised that you didn't get a lot more calls in favor, because the people who have something to gain, I imagine they would have had everybody they know call and say it's wonderful, just because they want to see it go ahead. And again, I'm up here with a heavy heart because these are my friends, but I think it's not in the best interest of all of the residents, and I want to, you know, I support those businesses, and I will continue to support them and recommend them because they are good businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members, mayor, and all. My name is Ron Hendrickson. I wanted to make a few comments also on this project. First, I'd just like to note, repeating what George said, that the truth is in the aerial photos that Tony showed us here. Regardless what one person says and one person says something different than another, to me that tells the true story. But the other point that just came up here a moment ago is that if the parking remains there, and we're going to spend all this money, actually over $1 million to move the merge lane in order to get this attractive, aesthetic appearing entry. And if we leave the cars there, that's just going to compromise everything. So I think that's something that needs to be really thought about very carefully. The staff's recommended alternative scheme, which includes the deletion of street parking in the intersection, provides a 20-foot wide sidewalk. And the compromise of leaving the parking in place would reduce the sidewalk width to 25 feet. So we're going to spend all this money to move this merge lane to get a 25-foot wide sidewalk? Doesn't make sense to me. The 33-foot wide sidewalk, which was the initial proposal where we have removal of the car parking, is a real question as to what is that 33 feet going to be utilized for. We've never had any discussion through the CAP meetings, and I attended most of them, and they never want to discuss, you know, there are actually two restaurants in that distance, the gentleman's bungalow restaurant and Rothschild's at the other end. And so we're going to do all of this so that those two restaurants can, if they desire, have parking or have a restaurant seating outside, and I think that's really questionable. So I think the 20-foot wide sidewalk scheme, which I believe the staff is really proposing, makes a lot of sense. You can get the landscaping in, you can get the signage in, and the sidewalk is still going to be probably close to 20 feet in some locations, and could accommodate possibly some outdoor dining if that's desired. But I wanted to point out something that hasn't really been discussed, and that is the traffic situation there. We understand that all of the proposed development in the area is probably accounted for in all of the city's traffic analyses, but let's keep in mind, we have, over the next 2 years, we have coming online in Newport Center a 20-story, 380,000 square foot PIMCO office tower. We have an 18-story, 300,000 square feet Irvine Company office tower. We have 22,000 square feet of additional retail at Fashion Island, and all of this is under construction right now. So that's going to be coming online, and what do we think that's going to do to Coast Highway traffic? In addition, since we're probably not going to get the 19th Street Bridge, when and if the Banning Ranch development occurs, a high percentage of that traffic is going to dump out on a Coast Highway and obviously get down into Corona Del Mar. So I think we need to think in terms of what's going to be happening traffic-wise before we start tinkering with some aesthetic changes that are going to goof things up for a long period of time. So I hope you follow the staff's recommendation. I think they put a lot of thought into it. I think we have very, very competent staff, and certainly we ought to take advantage of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Mayor, members of the City Council, my name is Frank Peters. Until last night, I guess, I was a member of the Citizens Bicycle Safety Committee, but our charter has concluded. As a cycling advocate, I'm not too sympathetic to automobile traffic. I'm a pedestrian when I'm not on my bicycle. And where else in the city are we doing something to enhance the pedestrian experience? This would be one. I encourage you to vote in favor of the project. I've thought of a constituency, beneficiaries of this project. I asked last night, City Hall will be occupied sometime this spring. I picture city staff walking down to Corona del Mar. The crosswalk would be narrowed, which would improve safety for them. I think it would be nice to have the wider sidewalk there. As it relates to the parking, if we have to choose some other plan, 2 accidents a year in the intersection, again, I think you have to think of pedestrians on the sidewalk who could be involved. There's some chance that those could be city staff people again. So I would encourage you to vote to remove the parking. Thank you.
Next speaker, please. Thank you.
I am Sandy Haskell, Corona Del Mar. I was also on this committee, the CAP committee that looked at this project, and I would encourage you to vote for it as it is. I know that they've talked a lot about the backing up of the traffic, but we've had that forever. I think the backing up of the traffic has a lot to do with the timing of the lights. When we were considering this project and moving the bottleneck, which it is a bottleneck and we are just moving it, our biggest consideration was if you're at a very wide part of the narrowing down, you can see what's coming. The way it is now, if you're unfamiliar with the area, you really don't see it coming, and it is more dangerous. So I think moving the bottleneck up will be a safety advantage, and it will also be an advantage to have the area pedestrian-friendly and more of a village. Thanks.
Next speaker, please.
Council, I'm John Carroll. I'm the Vice President of the Irvine Terrace Homeowners Association. And our management company got several phone calls when the test was going on. And one of our entrances is onto Avocado. And we had a lot of problems down there. In fact, we had a resident that almost got hit by a car trying to swing wide to get into the left turn lanes to go up to MacArthur. And my only comment is, and it would be lovely if we could have all things, it's a beautiful looking project, but it's just obviously not going to work from a traffic standpoint. We now have had the advent of the Sharrows Lane coming in through Corona Del Mar, and I think that's just going to add to more congestion during the summer months, especially when we get a lot of bike riders. And I'm not against bike riders. We have to share the road, but I'm looking at a situation where I think it's just going to get worse. So,
are there any other speakers? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and bring this back to the council.
Mayor Curry?
Mr. Petros.
I do like the notion of pedestrian activity in Corona Del Mar. I think it's something that we need to be doing throughout the city, promoting alternative modes. I would caution this council, though, on moving forward with this because of the heavy hand of OCTA and some of the policy issues. I believe that as we sit here, to act prior to investigating an MPH amendment, a general plan amendment, to just do this today is premature. I was somewhat confounded with the notion that while this plan removes the lane, it also removes the parking, and yet if we retain the lane and remove the parking, we still get another 12 feet of available pedestrian use. So in fact, I can't see why a hybrid isn't an advantageous solution here, where 3 lanes still go through the intersection and the curb is moved out. Parking remedies can be found at other locations like Carnation for one, if that is where it goes.
Thank you. Member Gardner.
I guess I agree a lot with what Councilman Petro said. I don't understand, and I walk all through Corona Del Mar, that's how I get around, but I don't understand why widening the sidewalk, what it accomplishes. Unless we want to give a certain benefit to those businesses that they could have outdoor dining, our sidewalks seem to be wide enough, and we could just use that space for. Don't necessarily need to move out the sidewalk, I guess is what I'm saying.
Thank you. Mr. Selich.
I don't know if I should admit this or not, but when the vision plan was being conceived about, I guess, 12 years ago or so, this was my idea. It seemed like a terrific idea at the time. In my career, I've learned that when you start messing with streets, you really start getting people upset and change routes and street widths and things of that nature. The idea was, as Mr. Dawson indicated, to move the bottleneck further to the west, because there was a bottleneck there, and it seemed to make sense at the time. Back in November, I went and gave a presentation to the Irvine Terrace Homeowners Association at their annual meeting, and Mr. Carroll was there, as well as quite a few other Irvine Terrace residents. And the perception from the people in Irvine Terrace is that this is a terrible solution. I tried to talk about all the good things the city was doing, but all that anyone wanted to talk about was the lane drop. And I heard more at that meeting than I did through all the emails and everything I've received from people on it. And I can just tell you that the people in Irvine Terrace feel that that moving that bottleneck over in their neck of the woods is very detrimental. The major concerns that I heard was coming off of Avocado, trying to make a left turn onto MacArthur Boulevard, and the photographs that Mr. Brine showed, where he showed the empty two left turn lanes, that was a problem that they described. And then also even coming out of Irvine Terrace, which is further down on the other side of Newport Center Drive, that even there coming out of that entrance and heading towards MacArthur, that the traffic, in their opinion, was intolerably backed up past Avocado. So there's a whole community there that, even though we're taking this bottleneck and moving it from one portion of Corona Del Mar to another, there's a whole community that, in my opinion, from all the comments that I've received as well as some of the emails, is adamantly opposed to us moving ahead with this lane drop.
Thank you. Mr. Hinn.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure on one of those pictures I saw my car. On two separate occasions, I was going eastbound on Coast Highway, wanting to go over to Bristol Farms, and couldn't get to Avocado to make the left turn, had to go up Newport Center Drive and work my way back around and come back down to Corona Del Mar Plaza. So while we talk in terms of just moving the bottleneck, I think it's a more impactful move than it's been described, at least by some folks. When I first saw this plan, I was very much in favor of it. I really thought it was a solid plan that was going to be a very nice enhancement, not just to the intersection, but to Corona Del Mar. And I still think that some of the benefits of that plan can be achieved by eliminating those spaces and widening the sidewalk, but still retaining the 3 lanes. And I think it'll have a significant benefit, or at least eliminate a significant negative to the western aspect of this. So it seems to me it would be appropriate to really more carefully explore eliminating the parking spaces, but still widening the sidewalk and retaining the 3 lanes. I do think widening the sidewalk is something that's a good thing for Corona Del Mar. It's not just what would you do with it. It's the issue of ambiance and the feeling of a pedestrian-favored area And I think widening the sidewalk will help with that. So I'm sensitive to the loss of parking right in front of those businesses, and I would like to see, before we actually proceed, I would like to see the offered solution for the parking. So I would withhold, approval of a final plan here until we can see what the parking substitution solution is.
Mayor Curry, I'd like to have that go farther, and that not just to replace the 9 parking places, but this would be part of a parking solution in that area. We have so many different issues, so not to just look at that, but to look at it holistically so that we can accomplish more than one thing.
Mr. Hill?
I guess I would have a tendency to agree with Councilman Henn's comments. Mayor Gardner, I would say that there's a dramatic difference between walking down a sidewalk as it exists today in Corona Del Mar versus walking down one that's nicely landscaped along the road path.
I wasn't talking about the landscaping. I'm just saying I don't care how wide the sidewalk is. If it has to, I don't know that it makes a big difference if the sidewalk itself is 3 feet wider as far as concrete. I do want the landscaping, definitely.
All right, thank you. The goal that I saw for this project from the very beginning was to create an enhanced environment for the entrance to Corona Del Mar. And that enhancement came in several different ways. One was for enriched landscaping. The second way that I would say was for the opportunity, in fact, not because the businesses came to us, but because we that were involved early on wanted to encourage the businesses to have some form of outside dining, to put up some colorful umbrellas, to put up something that would be of interest and aesthetic in that particular area, something that would cause people to want to come to that area and walk through that area. And so I do, after it was explained to me, I do get the trade-off of eliminating the convenience of a parking stall with generating more foot traffic in that area to if not equal, increase the opportunity for business in that particular area. I think the aesthetic is the initial reason. I think the aesthetic can be achieved by eliminating the parking along there. And possibly slightly reducing the landscape, but to reach a compromise across the path and not have to deal with the bottleneck. Having said all of that,
Excuse me.
I didn't know I was finished either. So, having said all of that, I do think that one of the very next things should be the coordination with other county agencies to ensure that whatever action we take, that we don't eliminate our access to Measure M funds and get ourselves crossways with the artillery plan. So,
Yes. Well, one thing I'd like to add to the discussion here is that when we did the original vision plan, the idea behind the whole idea of moving the curb out was to create a more pedestrian-friendly environment there and to eliminate some of the harshness of that MacArthur intersection. So even though this compromise plan doesn't go fully towards implementing what was originally envisioned, certainly by having a wider sidewalk parkway area there where you could have landscaping and do the things that Mr. Hill was talking about would certainly go a long way towards advancing the original goals of the vision plan. So I think that that might be an appropriate way to go.
Would someone like to offer a motion?
I move that we accept the proposal by staff to eliminate the parking, but not to change the merge lane, and to pursue a conceptual design of landscaping in that area.
Second.
May I ask for clarification? I would, instead of saying landscaping in that area, I would say a redesign of that area to incorporate a wider pedestrian way and appropriate landscaping.
Fine.
And do I understand, too, that that includes your call for a comprehensive parking solution there as well as part of taking those 9 spaces? Okay.
Yeah, prior to be able to evaluate the parking solution before we're actually proceeding with the project.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's the motion. Is there a second?
I seconded already.
Motion second. Let me just say for my own 2 cents here, yeah, I think this is a validation of the city's decision to actually do a study and get some facts. I know I've had this presented to me since I've been on the city council. I think it's a good idea that I've supported historically, and a lot of good people that I know have been involved in promulgating this over the years. But when you do a study and you get some facts, evidence demands a verdict. And I think we saw that during the course of the last summer as we looked at the analysis of how this actually impacted the community. I do share the concerns about the loss of parking. I think that needs to be very carefully addressed to make sure that we don't inadvertently create more problems that we're trying to solve here when we take it away, and make sure that there's adequate provision for substitute parking going forward. Are there any other comments?
Mr. Curry, before you vote, just from staff's perspective, just so you know then, if your approval of this tonight is asking for staff to come back with a concept plan, we will have to come back to you with a little bit of a budget request for that. And just so you know, the overall capital expenditure with this has not been budgeted. The larger plan, I think we estimated about $1.2 million. And talking with Public Works Director Webb, he thinks what we're talking about now is probably in the range of $400,000 to $450,000, which is still a lot of money, and that's not budgeted either. So it's perfectly okay to study that, and we will. We'll come back to you, but know that that will be a decision you will make in the future as to how to fund that.
Good. Seeing no further comments, please vote.
Coming. For 1 vote. Okay. Do you vote in the affirmative, or is it an affirmative? Okay. The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. I see Bill Barrington in the audience. I think Bill was going to make a presentation earlier, and I was told that, and it didn't make it on the agenda, and I think I inadvertently passed him. And with the council's indulgence, I'd like to invite Bill to come and just say a few words briefly at this point in time, if that's all right with everybody else.
Thank you, Mayor Curley, and all you. I'm here to promote the awards banquet following the Christmas Boat Parade. It's January 25th at the Balboa Bay Club and Resort. Starts at 6 o'clock, and there's music, cocktails, silent auction, live auction, dancing, and it's a wonderful event. The Balboa Bay Club puts on a real fine dinner, 4-course dinner. That includes and all the wine you can drink. And it costs $125. So I invite everybody here, and everybody in the room is invited to go. And I have invitations, and I'll leave it. Can I leave them here?
Leave them with the city clerk. Thank you very much.
One other thing.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Let's go to item 16 now, the resolution regarding the amending the indenture for Hoag Hospital. Is there a staff report?
We would have a brief staff report if you so desired. You folks have seen this
Is there any
before.
member of the council who feels the need for a staff report? No. All right, seeing none, is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Is there a motion?
Move the action.
Motion and second. All those in favor, please vote.
Affirmative. Okay. Prior to reading the vote, I'll read the title for item 16, Resolution Number 2013-4, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Newport Beach authorizing amendments to the bond indenture for the City of Newport Beach Revenue Bond, Hogue Memorial Hospital Presbyterian, Series 2009 B, C, D, and E. With that, the motion carries unanimously.
Right, thank you. Item 17, the reuse of the existing City Hall property. Mr. Kiff?
Mayor Curry,
Excuse me.
for the
Mr.
very
Petros?
same reason on the previous item, a business association with one of the possible respondents, I will be recusing myself.
Thank you, Mr. Petros.
Mayor Curry, I would also have to recuse myself. I have a business relationship with a business in Violito Plaza, and although I don't know that it's a conflict, in order to avoid even the appearance of such, I will be recusing myself as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Henn. All right, staff report. Ms.
Yes.
Brandt.
Thank you, Mayor Curry, members of the council. We have been in the process for a number of months in terms of looking at what would be the appropriate land use for the current City Hall property once we vacate the property and move to this new facility. Back in October, we released a request for qualifications packet to the public, inviting development teams to submit statements of qualifications to the city for the development of either an apartment high-end project or a boutique hotel project or some hybrid of those two development concepts. We are very pleased to report that we received 15 statements of qualifications by the November 20th deadline, and the reviewing team that evaluated the 15 submittals was very pleased with the, first of all, with the number of submittals, but the overall quality of the packets that were submitted and the very highly qualified development teams that were put together. The teams that we evaluated showed a lot of experience in both the apartment project proposal as well as the boutique hotel proposal. We felt that they demonstrated a high level of experience and expertise with these types of projects. We did look at the 15 proposals and rank them. That was a combination of staff, our consultant Dennis Stone, as well as the Neighborhood Revitalization Committee. In review of the submittals, it was our conclusion that it was too premature at this time to make a selection between the two development concepts, but rather that we would move forward into a request for proposal stage that would be limited to 6 respondents. So we have selected for your consideration this evening 3 respondents in each of the development categories. And there has been a change from our staff report from when it was originally published. We received a notification yesterday from Archstone, who had been one of our recommending development teams to move forward, that they are withdrawing from the process. So staff, in consultation with the Ad hoc Revitalization Committee, have recommended that Olin Properties be moved forward into this band of 6. So within the boutique hotel concept, we have 3 development teams that we felt were qualified to move forward. That would be Pacific Hospitality Group, R.D. Olson Development, and Sun and Blick Development Company. For the residential mixed-use concept, we have AMLI Residential Partners, Olin Properties, and the Shop-Off Group. And I do want to make a comment that we appreciate very much all of the submittal packages that were given to the city. We appreciate the hard work that went into preparing not only the written materials, but also in assembling the development teams. And we just felt that it was appropriate to down select and to a manageable number of firms to move forward into the next phase. So I would be happy to answer any additional questions. I think our next slide, though, is regarding the process as we move forward from this evening, and Principal Planner Jim Campbell will provide that information.
Thank you, Kimberly. On the slide here, we have basically a schedule of events for the next phase. Again, we're suggesting that this council authorize staff to proceed forward with a request for proposals for the 6 firms as indicated by Kimberly. And so what we've got here is a schedule looking to get the request for proposals out on January 28th and January 24th. Do a walkthrough here at the City Hall site, not here. I haven't quite moved in here yet, but we will eventually. But obviously have a walkthrough at the old City Hall site. Get written questions and answers posted so everyone has the benefit of all the questions and answers. Proposals would be due in March. Tentative, that's a 60-day window. At this point in time, we're looking at having the council study session shortly thereafter, where each of the proposers could come forward and explain their proposals to the full city council at the study session. And then we can obviously have some public dialogue about what those projects are. At that point in time, then we would look at the proposals with staff, consultants, and the ad hoc committee in the month of April, and come back in May with city council with an agenda item suggesting that we pick one of those projects, and in so doing, we would obviously select one of the land uses, whether it be a hotel or that residential mixed-use project. So if there's any questions on this, happy to answer it, and that really is the conclusion of the report.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell. Any questions from the council? Councilmember Daigle.
Will there be any sort of a ranking criteria in terms of the review of proposals, or how will that work? You see, looking at this step here, the ad hoc committee and the staff and the consultants review proposals, like what will they sort of be reviewed against?
Councilmember Daigle, we will be developing very precise criteria for the next phase in terms of being able to rank each of the proposals and meeting the city's intent and purposes for the property. So I think it'll be a very systematic approach in reviewing each of the proposals.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right, let me open this up to public comment. Is there any member of the public who'd like to speak on this matter? Please come forward.
Mayor Curry, members of the City Council, my name is Matt Shannon. I am a redevelopment strategist. I previously worked as a senior developer for the country's second largest retail property owner, and before that for the leading urban planning firm. I also have worked for 2 residential developers and for the City of Glendale's redevelopment agency. I understand retail, mixed-use environments, and redevelopment. First, I wish to thank Council Members Hill and Henn for taking the time to explain to me some of the history that has led to where we are today. A lot of the steps that the city has taken to date have been very logical. But something happened along the way that reflects a loss of focus. According to the Community Development Director's staff report for today's meeting, whatever project is built on the City Hall site is expected to, and I'm quoting, serve as a significant catalyst to the revitalization of the overall Lido Village area. The question for you today is whether you really do want to revitalize the entire Lido Village or merely get rid of a piece of surplus property. Lido Village's dominant use category, and the one that is most visibly alien, is retail, which has been in decline for many years, as you know. Lido Village is now blighted in places thanks to many boarded-up storefronts. The problem is that neither 99 apartments nor a similar number of hotel rooms is likely to catalyze the retail's return. You already have thousands of residences in the area, and the addition of 100 more won't create sufficient additional demand to spur the redevelopment of the retail along Via Lido and in Lido Plaza. As far as I can see from the record, there has been no serious analysis to try to understand what is killing Lido Village's retail, nor has there been any analysis on how much retail can be built on the City Hall site without triggering a citywide vote. My professional opinion is that part of the problem is that there is insufficient retail in Lido Village, combined with the loss of the grocery store anchor. The proposed West Marine tenant in the former grocery store space will not help. Nearby retailers that may be afraid of new retail on the City Hall site actually would benefit substantially by the addition of new retail, because retail thrives when you add more of it, especially higher end in close proximity. This is not the case of building a Walmart big box that hurts Main Street retailers. Quite the opposite. Newport Beach can afford to think bigger. The city is blessed with powerful demographics that high-end retailers crave, including median household income in the city that is 25% higher than Beverly Hills. That's one of the top criteria that retailers use for opening up flagship stores. Those amazing demographics, combined with a highly visible site that is easily accessed and with a good brand name to boot, Lido Village, means that the City Hall site would be a good place to start a rodeo drive for Orange County, or possibly a Santana Row, which is a model I know that the city has already considered. The highest-end fashion retailers prefer authentic urban street vibes over malls, and a restaurant cluster also should be a part of it, unlike in Rodeo Drive. When the City Hall site redevelops as a Phase 1 of a high-end urban retail district, there will be new market pressure on Lido Plaza and Lido Marina Village to either upgrade or sell their properties. But you won't know Lido Village's true potential until you ask the right developers. Unfortunately, most developers specialize. Most apartment developers really only build apartments and do not like to do retail. So to test the waters for a retail-heavy redevelopment, I suggest, number 1, putting the current RFQ on hold just for a few months. Number 2, conduct an analysis of how much retail can be built on the City Hall site without triggering a citywide vote. Number 3, issue a second RFQ targeting the country's best retail and mixed-use developers. And that would lead to number 4, hopefully, a joint development with the winners of the 2 RFQs, which may be a possibility if another property owner or 2 decides to join this process. Once the City Hall site is redeveloped, the city will lose most of its leverage to spur revitalization of this badly distressed district. Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers, please come forward.
Yes, good evening, Mayor. My name is George Schroeder, and I did serve on the Citizens Advisory Panel for the Lido Village District. This area has been studied to death, so I don't know where the last resident was like the last 2 or 3 years, but it's been studied to death. And the adjacent commercial property owner has a lot of retail plans, and the reason we got, and I'm sure everybody knows this, we got to primarily residential or hotel uses. We should not be competing with the retail uses next door, and I guess it's not even necessary to respond to his ideas, but I just want to say I support what the staff recommends. We need to move ahead on this, go with these 2 studies, look at the residential and the boutique hotel use, and I'm sure, just as we have in the past, we'll get a good plan and we'll get a lot of public input. You'll hear what the residents' concerns are, and most important thing, we have to also look at the city's return to help pay off some of the expenses of building this fabulous building we're in, and I'm sure you'll do a good job with that. So I support going ahead with this plan right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Mayor Curry, council members, I'm Hugh Helm. As I believe most of you know, I am the designated representative of the Lido Isle Community Association Board for the Lido Village Revitalization Project, and I was also privileged to serve on the CAP. I know you, council members and city staff, have received an array of communications over the past few months from numbers of people regarding this City Hall site reuse. And yesterday, the president of the board for the Lido Isle Association communicated to Councilman Hill, as the member of the NRC overseeing the Lido Village project, and to City Manager Kift, that accepting the board, or I as their designated representative, others who claim or infer that they speak for Lido Isle residents regarding this project, in fact, speak only for themselves and perhaps their associates. And he wanted to make that point clear so you understood that. Secondly, and briefly, there has been a substantial response to the RFQ, 15 entities or groups. Those submissions have been vetted carefully by the NRC and the staff. The staff has made appropriate recommendations here tonight. It's time to move forward on the track which has been approved and recommended. Please proceed with the RFP and the other related master plan amendments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments on this matter? Right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Is there a motion or further?
I would like to second the motion.
Motion and second to move the action. Once again, I would just observe that this is an example of where we take our time and gather some evidence and do some research, and I think we end up with better decisions. So,
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Selich.
Yeah, before we take the vote, I see a number of the people on the list out in the audience here, and just like to emphasize, just from my standpoint anyway, that I think what we're really looking for here is a really unique Newport Beach design, and not whether it's residential or hotel, not some cookie-cutter design off the shelf from somewhere else that gets squished and squeezed around to fit the site. So that's certainly something I'm looking for, and I think that's the desire of the rest of the City Council. And then I just want to make one other comment, that I think when these proposals come back and we're going to be making the decision, it's going to be based on, one part of it's going to be the direct financial benefits to the city, but the other part's going to be the indirect benefits that were pointed out in the previous analysis. And I did make some comments to staff on some of the holes I saw in the last analysis we did. So when this comes back, I hope that we really have a beefed up analysis of what the secondary benefits are, so we can make a good decision on this project.
Thank you. Please vote.
With council members Petros and Hen recusing themselves, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Motion for reconsideration?
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted for the prevailing side.
Is there a motion for reconsideration? All right, seeing none, this has been a very sad few weeks in Newport Beach, and so we have several people that we're going to adjourn the meeting in memory of this evening who have been very prominent citizens over the years. Let me recognize Councilmember Selich, who will begin with the first one, and I'll do three more after that.
Thank you, Mayor. This is in memory of George Kaler. George is was a resident of Corona Del Mar. George and his wife Bonnie moved from the Midwest to their hilltop home in Corona Del Mar in 1956, where they have resided for the past 46 years. George loved God, country, his family, sports, coaching, helping others without seeking recognition, traveling throughout the world, telling stories, and having a nice juicy steak. He's survived by his beloved wife of 54 years, Bonnie, his son David Kaler, and his wife Kim, and their 4 children, Drew, Shelby, Brooke, and Madison, his daughter Ann Chatillon, her husband Rick, and their daughter Jenna, and his daughter Heidi Albers, and her husband David, and son Cameron. George was loved by family, friends, and colleagues, and is deeply missed by all.
Thank you. Longtime Newport Beach resident Walter Karamza passed away on December 19th. Born on a small farm in South Dakota in 1921, Walter grew up to serve as a pilot in the Army Air Corps during World War II and flew B-24 bombers between India and China. Walter first spent time in California during training for the Air Corps at the Santa Ana Air Base. That visit prompted him to return to California after the war and make this his new home. Walter graduated from Occidental College and UC Berkeley School of Law. He began his legal career as the Assistant City Attorney for the City of Glendale. In 1957, he became the first full-time city attorney for Newport Beach. Walter left the city in 1964 when he was appointed to the Municipal Court in Huntington Beach, and he later accepted a judicial appointment to the Orange County Superior Court, where he served until his retirement in 1984. Those that had the honor of knowing Walter say that he was a true example of the greatest generation. Former city manager Bob Shelton, who I believe is with us tonight, worked alongside Walter and remembers him as a remarkable person and friend, kind and generous, with a dedication to integrity and the highest ethical standards. Walter is survived by his wife of 68 years, Thelma, his daughter Susan Powell, 3 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. A celebration of life will be held on January 26th at 4 p.m. at Big Canyon Country Club. In lieu of flowers, the family asked for donations to be made in Walter's honor to your favorite charity. Buddy Belshie passed away on December 19, 2012. Buddy served as a lifeguard for 60 years. He was a fixture as the lifeguard at Big Corona, protecting the waters there for the last 19 of his 47 years with the city of Newport Beach. He retired from the city in 2010. Born in Orange in 1934, Buddy grew up in Huntington Beach. He was a multiple All-American swimmer at Huntington Beach High School, and in the 1950s was one of the top middle distance swimmers in the United States. Buddy later swam for Orange Coast College and then the University of Denver, finishing 9th in the 1,500-meter swim at the 1956 Olympic swim trials. He transferred to Cal State University Long Beach and received his degree in 1959. Buddy had strong ties with the California lifeguarding, U.S. Masters swimming, and the local running communities. He competed in the La Jolla Rough Water Swim every year it was held from 1947 through 2005, and he created the popular Newport peer-to-peer 2-mile ocean swim in 1976. Buddy was considered the best pure lifeguard on the force, said Battalion Chief Jim Turner. His ability to concentrate on water observation for long periods of time
often before they even realized they were in distress, was exceptional. He will be remembered
and 6 grandchildren. Seasonal life Brian was hired by the city as a lifeguard cadet in the summer of 1990 and became a seasonal lifeguard the following summer. He held that position for the next 22 years. Brian's ability in the water and confidence on medical aids helped him quickly advance in seniority, where he patrolled the beaches and acted as a mentor to many of the younger tower lifeguards. He also worked as an instructor in the Junior Lifeguard program. Brian was known for making good decisions in critical situations. During a sand entrapment incident in 2006, his quick thinking and tireless efforts led Brian and several other lifeguards to successfully dig out a trapped young boy. Brian saved the boy's life and received the Bravo for Bravery Award from the American Red Cross for his actions. This is on top of the hundreds of rescues, medical aids, and other selfless acts of courage that decorate Brian's 14,500 hours of beach service for Newport Beach. Brian is survived by his parents, John and Mary Lou, brother Robert, sister-in-law Claire, nieces Naya and Georgie, and nephew James. He will also be deeply missed by his friends and coworkers. Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of these great residents of our city, we stand adjourned.